Chen Yuan stares at the phone screen in horror, not believing the message from Lin Shatong. She coldly informs that she has decided to end their relationship. Chen Yuan hurriedly types the text, trying to understand why she suddenly decided to leave. He excitedly excuses himself, assuming that she was offended because of the magic water. But the message is not delivered, and Chen Yuan realizes that Lin Xiaotong has removed him from his friends. Chen Yuan sits in despair, ignoring the friend who calls him to play online. Overwhelmed with emotion, he slams his fist on the table with rage. His roommates discuss in surprise that this is his 6th breakup in a month. Meanwhile, on the street, the girls scornfully call Chen Yuan a known sycophant. One of them, Lin Shatong, coldly remarks for him to stop humiliating himself in front of everyone. Chen Yuan humiliatingly begs Lin Shatong to forgive him and promises to change for her. Lin Shatong calmly explains that she went back to her ex as he needs her more. Chen Yuan cries out in despair, reminding her what a scoundrel Huang Junkai was. Suddenly, an expensive car brakes sharply nearby, interrupting his emotional speech. Huang Junkai looks out of the car window and smugly tells Lin Xiaotong to get in with him. Lin Xiaotong coldly asks Chen Yuan not to meet again, afraid of her boyfriend's reaction. Chen Yuan lonely looks after the car, taking his favorite girl away from him. Later, he joylessly walks into the supermarket, trying to numb the pain of the breakup. As he drinks water, thoughts of constant betrayals and humiliations torment his heart. Chen Yuan clutches the bottle with anger, deciding that he no longer wants to depend on other people's opinions. Chen Yuan, full of determination, decides to stop humiliating himself forever and become the master of his own destiny. Suddenly, a strange light surrounds him and a mysterious system reports a successful activation. Chen Yuan surprisingly studies the system's window showing his fortune and the incredible sum of 90 trillion. With interest and bewilderment, he tries to understand what this unusual gift of fate is intended for. Suddenly, a mocking voice is heard, accusing him of perversion and suggesting that he take action immediately. An attractive girl, Su Lily, appears in front of Chen Yuan and sharply rebukes him for his intrusive gaze. The system immediately displays information about Lily, indicating her current attitude towards him as 50 points. Chen Yuan is stunned to realize that if he raises the girl's liking above 95 points, she will become his devoted fan. The system gives him a special card with 9 trillion points available exclusively for girls. Chen Yuan stares at the card in shock, realizing that his status could completely change thanks to this system. Chen Yuan decisively accepts the challenge and decides to test the capabilities of the new system on Su Lily. He confidently approaches her and, smiling, offers to pay her today's expenses in full. The system immediately confirms the successful binding of the new target and activates the mission to conquer Lily. Su Lily replies with a sneer that money alone is not enough to impress her. Chen Yuan realizes with a slight smirk that the game has just begun, and there is much to look forward to. Chen Yuan, smirking, offers Su Lily to see for himself what he can do. Su Lily, full of self-confidence, decides to humiliate him by asking him to pay for shopping for everyone present. She contemptuously thinks that she is about to show Chen Yuan how ridiculous he looks in his cheap clothes. But unexpectedly for her and everyone around her, Chen Yuan easily transfers 50,000 to her. The shocked Su Lily stares stunned at her phone screen, unable to believe what is happening. Chen Yuan smiles calmly, enjoying the surprise of everyone around him after transferring the huge sum. He confidently asks the stunned Su Lily for permission to add her on WeChat. Su Lily, slightly embarrassed and amazed by Chen Yuan's wealth, begins to look at him differently. A faint smile touches her lips as she realizes that the situation has changed dramatically. Su Lily approaches Chen Yuan with interest, flirtatiously agreeing to exchange contact. Su Lily slyly approaches Chen Yuan and mysteriously asks to go to a place with her. They arrive at a luxurious shopping mall, and Chen Yuan observes her behavior with interest. Su Lily mockingly clarifies that she is not after money at all, just testing his sincerity. She confidently steps forward and says that she wants to see how far Chen Yuan is willing to go. Chen Yuan silently chuckles, realizing that the challenge is becoming more and more exciting. Chen Yuan relaxedly lets Su Lily choose whatever she wants in the expensive boutique. Suddenly, he notices a familiar figure in the store and is surprised to hear Lin Xiaotong's name. Lin Xiaotong turns around in confusion upon hearing her ex-boyfriend's voice and looks straight at him. Su Lily notices Chen Yuan's awkwardness and playfully whispers that she clearly appeared at the wrong time. Chen Yuan, smiling slightly, realizes that the situation is getting spicier than he expected. Chen Yuan keeps his composure and assures Su Lily with a smile that she showed up on time. Su Lily loudly asks to see her latest exclusive bag, defiantly ignoring Lin Xiaotong. Lin Xiaotong irritatedly notices that Chen Yuan keeps harassing her and decides to teach him a lesson. She defiantly picks up her bag and turning to Huang Junkai, flirtatiously hints at the upcoming holiday. Lin Shatong wants to show Chen Yuan that he can't compare to her new chosen one. Lin Shatong expects Huang Junkai to fulfill her wish easily, but things don't go according to plan. Huang Junkai irritatedly reminds her that they already celebrated her birthday recently. Lin Xiaotong awkwardly excuses himself, saying that one was on the lunar calendar and now another one is needed. Huang Junkai abruptly states that he doesn't like mercantile girls, suspecting her motives. Lin Shatong is stunned into silence, realizing how deeply wrong she was in her choice. Qin Yuan watches as Huang Junkai rudely takes the bag away from the disappointed Lin Xiaotong. Suddenly, Su Lily appears and takes the bag directly from Lin Xiaotong with a caustic smile. The system instantly records Su Lily's sympathy increase by 70 points after buying the expensive bag. Qin Yuan enjoys the moment of triumph, confident that Lily's conquest is near. However, he is slightly disappointed by the too small cashback received after spending so much. Lin Xiaotong stands humiliatedly on the sidelines, feeling the ridicule of those around him and his own powerlessness. Su Lily snidely ponders that selected items, like boyfriends, are always much nicer. Observing Chen Yuan's generosity, Lily decides that she owes it to herself to get such a rich suitor. She happily snuggles up to Chen Yuan, playfully thanking him and calling him husband. Lin Xiaotong watches this scene with pain in his eyes, unable to hold back his tears. Lin Xiaotong humiliatingly falls down in front of Chen Yuan, blaming him for his shame. Chen Yuan coldly looks at the ex-girlfriend, feeling completely superior in this situation. The system informs him that Huang Juansai's status has now been successfully changed to his sycophant status. Chen Yuan feels a deep satisfaction, realizing that he was able to completely turn the situation in his favor. Su Lily gently snuggles up to him, asking with a smile where they will go next. Chen Yuan confidently points to the store and suggests that Su Lily continue shopping. He smiles widely, saying that they will not be limited to today's purchases at all. With a wave of his hand, Chen Yuan points to the entire assortment, suggesting that they buy up almost all of the items. With a carefree smile, he informs the vendor to pack everything except for a couple of specified items. The surrounding people watch in amazement as Chen Yuan casually pulls out a card, preparing to pay for the huge purchase. Su Lily, looking at Chen Yuan, admiringly notes how attractive he looks as he pays for his purchases. With every swipe of Chen Yuan's card, her sympathy increases and she gladly accepts the expensive gifts. They go from store to store, and Su Lily becomes more and more fascinated by the shopping and the guy's generosity. Finally, Lily says with a slight sneer that she's already bought too much and won't fit anymore. She's clearly satisfied, though she tries to show that such purchases are not uncommon for her. Chen Yuan nonchalantly suggests that Su Lily should buy a house since the stuff doesn't fit in her bags anymore. Su Lily, stunned by his words, embarrassedly says that it's too much even for a first meeting. Chen Yuan realizes that he may have overdone it, and he feels a little embarrassed. He approaches Lily and lists all her habits and preferences with a charming smile. Leaning closer to the girl, he asks in a whisper if she was frightened by his sincere intentions. Chen Yuan easily and casually arranges a membership card for Su Lily with a large sum of money. He holds out his hand and, smiling playfully, says that if he scared her, he will give her a special gift. Su Lily blushes and looks at him with wide-open eyes, feeling her heartbeat increase. Chen Yuan whispers with a sly smile that she can always repay him with herself if she feels guilty. The embarrassed and angry Lily jokingly calls him a rascal and jokingly covers his face with her palm. Chen Yuan smiled smugly, noticing the admiration of the girls around from his unexpected generosity. Su Lily, slightly embarrassed by his attention, wondered why he didn't buy anything for himself. Chen Yuan shrugged awkwardly and admitted to her with a smile that he had run out of money. With a playful smile, Su Lily decided that it was now her turn to give him a return gift. She excitedly picked out clothes for Chen Yuan, reasoning that big fish needed to be skillfully baited. Su Lily smilingly chose a stylish haircut for Chen Yuan, carefully watching the transformation. She gazed at him mesmerized, amazed at how attractive he looked after the transformation. Chen Yuan, noticing Su Lily's admiration, felt unaccustomed to being groomed, which made him slightly embarrassed. He hesitantly asked her opinion, doubting whether this new look suited him. Su Lily coquettishly moved closer, saying that they now looked like a perfect couple. Su Lily gently touched Chen Yuan's hand, saying goodbye and thanking him for a pleasant day together. She flirtatiously confessed to him that today was the first time she felt something like love for the first time. Upon returning home, Chen Yuan found his friends completely surprised by his new stylish look. Chen Yuan proudly announced to them that he was on a date with Su Lily herself. He, pleased with himself, smiled relaxedly as he waited for his friend's reactions to such a high-profile news. Chen Yuan listened with a smile as his friends doubted whether he could win Su Lily's heart. One of them directly advised him not to overestimate his strength. After all, Su Lily was too popular. Unexpectedly, Chen Yuan received a message from Lin Shutong, suggesting that he should stop socializing if he hated her. Chen Yuan thought about it and replied that she would forever remain special in his heart. He learned that Lin Shutong needed a large sum of money to treat her mother. Chen Yuan didn't hesitate and sent Su Lily a transfer of 50,000 yuan for her mother's treatment. Lin Shutong was shocked and angered to find out that it was Chen Yuan who sent the money, not Huang Junkai. Her friends couldn't believe that an ordinary guy like Chen Yuan was able to part with such an amount of money so easily. Lin Shutong thought for a moment and decided that she had underestimated Chen Yuan's financial situation for nothing. Doubting her own choice, she decided to immediately find out Chen Yuan's true intentions. Lin Shutong received the transfer from Chen Yuan, and her favor towards him increased noticeably. She stared at the phone screen for a long time, pondering what this unexpected gesture of generosity meant. Chen Yuan sent her messages several times, but she didn't reply, which puzzled him a bit. He realized that Lin Shutong was too cunning and was most likely pondering her next moves. Clutching the phone in his hand, Chen Yuan decided to take his time with Su Lily, waiting for the right moment. Chen Yuan wondered if there was a way to spend money on women for maximum benefit. He came up with the idea of trying his options on a live streaming platform. He opened the app and saw a popular female streamer collecting gifts from fans. The chat was overflowing with messages from viewers, many of whom had spent huge sums for her attention. Chen Yuan smirked as he realized that he had found the perfect place to display his wealth. Chen Yuan wordlessly chose the most expensive gift on the list, preparing to surprise everyone. The popular streamer thanked him admiringly, calling his nickname and sending him an air kiss. Her eyes widened with shock when an animation of a huge rocket appeared on the screen, symbolizing the large donation. The chat exploded with comments, users discussing in amazement who this unknown rich man was. Chen Yuan, lying on his bed, smirked, knowing that he continued to be underestimated. Chen Yuan smirked and decided to give himself a real financial shock by increasing the amount of donations. He chose 900 missiles without hesitation and pressed the send button without thinking about the millions spent. His phone screen instantly filled with animations of many giant rockets, causing a wave of panic in the chat. The platform administration became alarmed when an anonymous donator suddenly spent 10 million yuan. The company executive jumped up from his desk, dumbfounded by the news of the unprecedented spending on a single broadcast. The platform manager was furious as he tried to figure out who had spent 10 million at one time. Panic rose in the streamer's room, the girls hurriedly sending private messages to the mysterious donator. Chen Yuan looked at his phone and saw a flurry of new notifications, all trying to contact him. The streamer girl, unable to believe her eyes, tried to realize if someone had actually spent so much money on her. She lost her balance out of surprise, blinked, and weakly moaned in mild shock. The platform employee was ordered by his superiors to hold Chen Yuan back at all costs. The streameress decided with a sly smile that she would not let such a donator go to others. She flirtatiously thanked Chen Yuan, suggesting that he send her a private message. Chen Yuan's phone had accumulated many messages from her and other streamers. Morning came, and he lay relaxed in bed, enjoying the results of his generosity. Chen Yuan saw that the news about the mysterious rich man who spent 10 million had become the top topic. He yawned lazily as he listened to the conversations of his roommates who seemed unrealistic about such a spending. In the list of relationships, he found that spending money did not strengthen the bond with Su Lily and Lin Shutong. He was seized with doubts as to whether the system required relationships to develop in real life. Opening the app, he was stunned by the number of private messages from girls wanting to meet. Chen Yuan hurriedly gathered himself after hearing that his friends had already run out of the room. He asked in surprise why they didn't call him and where they were in such a hurry. The friends excitedly explained that today was a general lecture where they could see Zhao Yuqi. One of them irritably demanded that Chen Yuan stop talking and rather walk with them. Upon noticing Zhao Yuqi, Chen Yuan froze, amazed by her grace and aura of mystery. There was a lively atmosphere in the university, with students hurriedly taking their seats in the auditorium. Zhao Yuqi, a recognized beauty and vice president of the student council, stood out among the crowd. She mastered the art of playing the piano, impressing the audience with her grace and refinement. As the head of a ballet troupe and an athlete, she displayed outstanding skills in fencing. Chen Yuan, watching her, wondered how difficult it was to attract her attention without a huge expense. Lin Shutong was surprised to notice that Chen Yuan looked much more attractive after a short break. She hesitantly pondered whether she might be interested in him again, but she thought back to Huang Junkai. Chen Yuan realized with annoyance that even a simple change of clothes had increased her favor. He thoughtfully pondered how he could win Zhao Yuqi's favor. His system was impatiently nudging him into action, suggesting that he begin a new stage of conquest. The company of students were excitedly watching as one of them was about to conquer Zhao Yuqi. The guy smugly tried to impress her, holding out his phone and demanding to be added to his contacts. Zhao Yuqi warily recoiled as he approached her with an imposing smile. He continued to insist, offering to befriend her and ignoring her obvious reluctance. Suddenly, he was grabbed by the collar, and the expression on his face was instantly replaced with consternation. Zhao Yuqi's neighbor grabbed the guy by the collar, threateningly demanding him to explain his intentions. He panicked and started to justify that he only wanted to know about the student union. His roommate gave him a disdainful look and told him to get out, mocking the ridiculous attempt at backstabbing. Zhao Yuqi intervened, calming down the situation, but she also looked slightly puzzled. Just then, another student appeared, wanting to add her to her contacts, causing her neighbor to be annoyed. Chen Yuan calmly held out his phone, suggesting that Zhao Yuqi exchange contacts. Zhao Yuqi's neighbor smirked, noticing that he was even more persistent than the previous suitor. Chen Yuan nonchalantly replied that the student union did not interest him at all. The neighbor suspiciously asked why he would add Zhao Yuqi to his contacts then. Chen Yuan slyly grinned, making it clear that his intentions were obvious. Chen Yuan confidently announced in front of everyone that he intended to seek Zhao Yuqi's favor. The students in the audience froze in shock, unable to believe that he actually dared to declare his intentions so openly. Zhao Yuqi calmly looked at him and after a little thought, she agreed to add him to her contacts. Lin Shutong listened with a gloomy expression as her friend suspiciously inquired about her connection with Chen Yuan. The crowd of students watched in despair as their unattainable goddess unexpectedly reciprocated. Zhao Yuqi calmly added Chen Yuan to her contacts, solidifying the new connection. Chen Yuan glanced at the phone in satisfaction, realizing that his efforts had not been in vain. His friends congratulated him admiringly, unable to believe that he was able to get her number. They asked hopefully if he could introduce them to her friends if everything worked out. However, someone wryly reminded Chen Yuan that he was still at the bottom of the social hierarchy. Chen Yuan stood confidently as the man in front of him smugly grinned and acknowledged his sanity, causing the crowd's gazes to tense. With a slight smile, Chen Yuan said that he admired his talent for enduring humiliation, adding that he might even take lessons from him. The crowd gasped and the man erupted in rage, shouting out that Chen Yuan was just a blind kitten beating on a closed door. Before he could finish, he rushed forward with a swing, but Chen Yuan easily dodged, grinning and calling his behavior childish. Suddenly, a female voice rang out, causing everyone to freeze. Standing in front of Chen Yuan was Su Lyle, known as the Conqueror of Hearts. Chen Yuan, smiling, apologized to Su Lyle for waiting and offered to make up for it with dinner, saying that he would die for such a mistake. Su Lyle flirtatiously fixed her hair and asked him if he liked her outfit, reminding him that he had bought it for her. To the side, another girl stood in the shadows, a tense atmosphere thickening around her as someone mumbled inaudible compliments about her bag. Chen Yuan easily supported the game, saying that he was speaking seriously and his words were even more real than gold as they walked side by side. The defeated man sobbed confusedly as he looked after them, not realizing what his shortcoming was, and desperately questioned what he was missing. The frustrated guy looked around irritably, unable to believe that anyone could feel more humiliated than he did. Lin Shutong looked at the departing people with trembling hands, whispering in despair that she was the first and didn't understand who Su Lyle thought she was. Somewhere high up, the sun was reflected in the building's windows as the tension around them continued to rise, filling the space with a mute question. Su Lyle held out a drawing to Chen Yuan with a radiant smile, proudly informing him that it was her gift to him. On the paper was his portrait, and at the bottom was an inscription: she had stayed up all night to finish this drawing. Su Lyle sharply warned Chen Yuan that if he dared to throw away her gift, she would not forgive him. Chen Yuan looked at the drawing with slight confusion, realizing that this was the first time in his life that a girl was giving him such a gift. Su Lyle smiled happily, leaning closer and eagerly asking if he liked her work. Chen Yuan looked at her attentively, but his eyes reflected more than just gratitude, but something more complex. A suspicion flashed through his mind. Was this all a trap set by Su Lyle specifically for him? Chen Yuan, smirking, coldly remarked that he was no longer the same person he used to be, and a dangerous determination flashed in his gaze. Su Lyle watched him carefully, clutching the drawing and lost in thought. Did he not like her gift? Chen Yuan, without hiding his doubts, directly asked why she had given him this drawing without taking his gaze away from her. Su Lyle became embarrassed, smiling nervously, and muttered that she had stayed up all night to draw it, hinting that he should appreciate it. Chen Yuan leaned closer, and with a slight sneer, clarified how she was going to respond if she couldn't give him something equally good in the future. Su Lyle exclaimed that Chen Yuan was a real rascal, and after scaring her, should immediately return the drawing to her. Chen Yuan dodged it while laughing and teasingly said that he wasn't going to give it back, as he wanted to keep it as a family heirloom. Suddenly, he deftly grabbed her wrist, leaned closer and whispered with a soft smile that of course the gift was beautiful, but he preferred her himself. Su Lyle felt her heart abruptly beat faster and her eyes reflected Chen Yuan standing so close. She blushed as she realized how good of a flirt he was, and at this moment, her sympathy for him grew a few more points. Chen Yuan, grinning slyly, leaned over to Su Lyle and stated with a hint that if she wanted to tease him, she should become a useful tool for him. A sharp voice made everyone turn around, and a moment later, someone's hand slammed forcefully into the air, clearly aiming at Su Lyle. The strong release of energy pushed her back, and with it, the two others who were nearby flew away before they even realized what had happened. The young man with glasses irritably demanded an explanation, claiming that Su Lyle had told him she was going to get her nails done, but now she was cuddling with someone else. He angrily splayed his hands, accusing her of suddenly turning a normal trip to the salon into a romantic date. The guy with glasses was indignant, pointing at Chen Yuan and accusing Su Lyle of getting close to him so quickly. Chen Yuan silently observed the situation, mentally noting that he was a typical loser who had become the servant of his feelings. Su Lyle glanced at the guy with irritation and sharply asked what he had to do with her personal life. Chen Yuan chuckled calmly as he turned to him and with a slight sneer, asked him his name and how long he had been chasing after Su Lyle. The guy frowned and introduced himself as Wang Yu and admitted that he had been trying to win her favor for half a year now, but to no avail. Chen Yuan ran his hand through his hair with a slight chuckle, admitting that he had once had similar feelings as well. He remembered working 4 part-time jobs, eating steamed buns with pickled vegetables just to please a girl. But in the end, she just chose someone else and got into someone else's car, leaving him heartbroken. Wang Yu exhaled shockedly, not believing that such a thing was possible and asking if Chen Yuan had experienced this too. Chen Yuan looked at him firmly and said that betrayal was the best motivator to become a great person. Chen Yuan cheerfully raised his hand and told Wang Yu to go back to the dormitory, forget about Su Lyle, work hard and make her regret her choice. Su Lyle watched the scene in confusion, puzzled as to why Wang Yu suddenly cried as if his heart had just been broken. She turned to Chen Yuan, trying to justify herself, and said that Wang Yu was just an ordinary acquaintance to her, and she didn't expect such a reaction. Chen Yuan calmly looked at her and assured her that he didn't care about her past, he only cared about who she was now. Su Lyle lowered her gaze, but in her heart she felt uneasy. She felt that Chen Yuan did not respect her and did not take her seriously. Chen Yuan turned his back on Su Lyle, and as he walked away, he said that she could continue to use his card, but until she sorted out her relationship, they shouldn't meet. His eyes flashed with excitement as he wondered how she would react to this challenge and eagerly awaited her response. Su Lyle pondered, feeling for the first time that someone truly understood her, and the moments with Chen Yuan came to mind. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she realized that he was sincere towards her, but she had ruined everything. Outside, evening came, and her sympathy for Chen Yuan grew, leaving new and unfamiliar emotions in her heart. Chen Yuan, grinning, pondered that you can't let women feel too confident, and sometimes it's good to tease them. He looked at his phone and noted that his ability had increased again, and now it was time to switch to Zhao Yuqi. A live streaming notification appeared on the screen, and Chen Yuan was surprised to find out that Zhao Yuqi was also streaming. He opened the broadcast and saw Zhao Yuqi in an elegant outfit introducing herself and talking about her skills in singing and dancing. Chen Yuan wondered if the student council president was only cold on the outside, while hiding a warm, soft nature on the inside. Chen Yuan looked at the number of viewers and was surprised that so few people were watching Zhao Yuqi's broadcast, although it seemed strange. A message from an unknown user appeared on the screen, teasing him by mentioning that he had sent many gifts yesterday. He opened the chat and saw a correspondence where the person he was talking to cheerfully offered to meet up, but then abruptly stated that his schedule was jammed. Chen Yuan frowned, realizing that they were trying to scam him for expensive donations, because even for millions, only thank yous were coming in return. A notification popped up on the screen that the streamer he subscribed to was participating in a contest, urging him to support her. Zhao Yuqi received the challenge and her image appeared on the screen with a spectacular VS caption, causing a stir among the viewers. Chen Yuan watched with interest, surprised that the student council president had decided to participate in such a competition format. Another girl appeared on the screen, smiling and greeting everyone, and in the chat room, the viewers were already discussing how good the new opponent was. Chen Yuan hummed, noting that fate had strangely pushed these two together, and anticipated how this duel would end. A battle of ratings began on the screen, and the viewers were actively sending gifts, deciding who would be the winner in this streamer duel. The gap in votes was colossal. One girl had only 206 points, while her rival was confidently leading with 10,687 points. The winner stretched smugly in her chair and suggested the loser to take a break, because even her rich admirer couldn't save her. The chat was buzzing, with the viewers discussing how the top donator had moved so quickly to the winner's side, leaving the former favorite to lose. Zhao Yuqi looked at the screen and tried to remain calm, but realized that without support, she had no chance of winning this battle. At this moment, a series of giant donations appeared on the air, and animations of gifts in support of the streamer started appearing on the screen one after another. The winner smiled happily, noticing the new influx of donations, and flirtatiously thanked her main sponsor, sending air kisses. Her rival sighed heavily, suppressing her irritation, but inside she was literally seething with indignation at the unequal distribution of support. When VS appeared on the screen again, she watched in shock as the situation rapidly changed and she was now in danger of losing. Chaos erupted in the chat room as one of the viewers suddenly sent out 1,000 missiles, blasting the airwaves with streams of animation effects. Zhao Yuqi saw this and dazedly covered her mouth with her hand, while those around her watched in amazement as she instantly lunged forward. The girl clenched her fists in rage, realizing that the generous donations had been sent to her rival instead of her, which hit her ego. Suddenly a message popped up informing her that her boss was demanding an explanation for what had happened, adding to the tension. With a smile, trying not to give away her confusion, she hastily stated that she had to end the broadcast, citing urgent matters. On the screen, it popped up that she had lost the battle, and the viewers in the chat room wryly discussed how she was suddenly put on the spot. Chen Yuan smirked and looked at the phone, pondering whether someone had the right to decide who they gave gifts to if they were selling smiles themselves. Chen Yuan was looking at Zhao Yuqi's broadcast while holding the phone in his hand, and his gaze was full of interest in her reaction. With a slight chuckle, he thought that he had already invested a lot in her, and now he hoped that she wouldn't let down his expectations. An anxious voice sounded in one of the office buildings, informing the supervisor that something big had happened again. A man in a business suit jumped up from his seat and shouted angrily that the mysterious donor with the nickname Lonely Cigarette had spent a huge sum of money again. The gray-haired executive frowned shockedly, thinking that if this man was spending tens of millions so easily, he might be the son of an oil tycoon. A sign on the door read Streamer Room, hinting at the place where the most popular personalities of the platform gathered. A group of girls were excitedly discussing that a rich fan had donated 10 million during a broadcast where someone was just playing the piano. One of them shouted in excitement, demanding to bring her triangular needle, as if preparing for an important event. Outside, the building glowed in the evening light, while inside, news of the generous donation continued to spread rapidly. One of the girls looking at her phone happily exclaimed that Zhao Yuqi's stream had become a trend, attracting the attention of thousands of viewers. One of her acquaintances happily waved her phone, reporting that her stream had gone viral and she was becoming an internet sensation. Zhao Yuqi, keeping her cool, skeptically pointed out that online popularity cannot be a reliable long-term plan. She firmly stated that the most important thing for a woman is to build a career and be economically and personally independent. Her interlocutor waved her off and lazily replied that she shouldn't lecture him, clearly not taking her words seriously. He smirked and leaned closer, asking with a conspiratorial expression if she knew the real identity of the rich man showering her with gifts. Chen Yuan waited impatiently for an answer, but Lin Shutong sighed tiredly and repeated irritably that she did not know the sender. He hastily assured that he was just curious, but the girl ignored it and decided to send a thank you message out of politeness. Chen Yuan frowned, realizing that Lin Shutong was contradicting herself. After all, she had recently condemned the desire to attract the attention of men. A sudden blow from behind made him shriek in surprise, bending down and instinctively grabbing his belt. Feeling a chill run down his back, he asked with a strained smile what was going on. Chen Yuan felt alarmed, but Lin Shutong at this time was surprised to realize that she might know the generous gift sender. She scrutinized the information on the screen and, slightly confused, said Chen Yuan's name, unable to believe her eyes. It turned out that he was the son of an influential businessman who had lived in luxury since childhood, but preferred to hide his wealth. Despite his elite education, Chen Yuan was tired of his heir status and just wanted to live a free life. One day, he met a girl who won his heart and decided to win her over by hiding his true origin. Chen Yuan hoped that the conversation would end, but Lin Shutong excitedly said that there could be no mistake. He tiredly asked if she had overread novels about rich CEOs, but she only sighed dreamily. Immersed in thought, Lin Shutong decided that she should sincerely thank Chen Yuan for his generosity. Meanwhile, Chen Yuan himself was unknowingly looking at his phone in surprise after noticing a new message. Zhao Yuqi had texted him, asking if he was free in the coming days, and suggested that they have dinner together. Chen Yuan wondered why Zhao Yuqi didn't even ask him where he got the money from, but just invited him to dinner. He was curious about her intention and decided to check what she was up to without showing his suspicions. With a smile on his face, he got on his moped and headed to the designated place, enjoying the road. As he stopped outside the restaurant, he noticed a luxury car nearby, a stark contrast to his transportation. A man with a cigar approached him, gave him an appraising look and asked who he was waiting here. Zhao Yuqi looked around, clearly expecting someone, and Chen Yuan watched her movements carefully. He wanted to call out to her, but he didn't have time to finish his sentence when he heard the voice of a man standing nearby. The man grinned and advised him to dream less, because without money, such beauties would quickly be taken away by others. Zhao Yuqi suddenly noticed Chen Yuan. Her eyes widened in surprise as if she didn't expect to see him. In her imagination, he appeared in a stylish suit by a spectacular motorcycle, looking simply irresistible. Chen Yuan sat calmly on the moped, but the man with the cigar grinned and asked when he would be able to afford such a machine. Suddenly, a flash of lightning lit up the sky, and the man seemed to lose his balance, flying into the air with a startled cry. Zhao Yuqi jumped onto Chen Yuan's moped without hesitation, and they swiftly took off, leaving the stunned spectators behind. The man in the suit stared at them in a daze, unable to believe that everything had happened so quickly. Standing by the luxurious yacht, he sighed wistfully, realizing that money didn't always bring true happiness. Zhao Yuqi opened her eyes wide as she realized that they had finally arrived and looked forward excitedly. A small restaurant with a brightly colored signboard appeared in front of them, and Chen Yuan confidently parked the moped and invited her inside. The waiter brought out dishes exuding a spicy garlic fragrance and smilingly wished her a pleasant appetite as he placed them on the table. Chen Yuan calmly moved the plate closer to Zhao Yuqi, displaying a reserved but caring manner. She gazed at him dreamily, admiring how he maintained a noble posture even in a simple establishment. Chen Yuan held out his gloves to Zhao Yuqi with a slight smile, showing his cultivation and caring in every little detail. He confidently started eating, carefully holding the shrimp, while Zhao Yuqi admiringly watched his ease. She marveled at how he, being wealthy, dined quietly in an ordinary establishment without creating pressure with his status. In her imagination, he appeared as a noble aristocrat elegantly dining in a luxurious hall amidst exquisite dishes. Chen Yuan, while taking a bite of his shrimp, suddenly noticed a pop-up notification informing him that Zhao Yuqi's affection for him had unexpectedly increased. Chen Yuan had barely had time to realize Zhao Yuqi's increased affection when she suddenly offered to peel the shrimp for him. He froze in slight confusion as he watched her carefully peel the shrimp and held it out directly to his lips. At that moment, several girls entered the restaurant, and the waiter's friendly voice informed them of the warm welcome. One of the new arrivals froze upon seeing what was happening, her eyes widened with shock at the sight of this scene. She couldn't believe her eyes. Zhao Yuqi was actually feeding Chen Yuan shrimp as if they were a couple. The hooded girl clenched her fists, her eyes burning with displeasure. First Su Leili, now Zhao Yuqi, Chen Yuan clearly knows how to attract attention. Her companion noticed the tense atmosphere and suggested to go elsewhere as it was too crowded. The guy with long hair only grinned, assuming that the people here were just acquaintances gathered here, not random people. He leaned over slightly, whispering that he loved eating in noisy places, hinting that he had no intention of leaving. Meanwhile, Chen Yuan sat quietly at the table, unaware of what was happening, his attention focused on his food. Chen Yuan was sitting quietly at the table when a few banknotes suddenly fell in front of him, as if inviting a deal. Looking up, he saw a guy with long hair who offered to sit at another seat with an indifferent smile. Chen Yuan frowned, wondering why the guy was saying such things and whether he thought he was cool. The stranger, noticing his reaction, grinned and asked if there would be enough money for him to leave after all. Suddenly, someone's fist forcefully clenched the bag strap, foreshadowing that something unexpected was about to happen. Chen Yuan tensed up when he saw Zhao Yuqi clutching the bag tightly, and her eyes flashed with fury. He didn't understand why she was so angry and pondered whether he had provoked her himself or if the reason was something else. The guy with the long hair cast an irritated glance at him, resentful that someone was interfering with his perfect date. Not getting the desired reaction, he pulled out more money and defiantly added it to the amount already lying on the table. Suddenly there was a firm hand on the bills, and a boy's voice sounded nearby, offering to find another place for them. The boy with the long hair grabbed the waiter by the collar, his face contorted with rage. He was not going to just tolerate this humiliation. Before he could say anything, he received a sudden blow with his bag right in the face, causing him to stagger backwards. Zhao Yuqi hurriedly raised her hands, guiltily exclaiming that it was an accident, but it was too late. Suddenly, a loud voice came from a woman in the restaurant, resenting that someone was wasting her money on courtship. Chen Yuan and Zhao Yuqi turned around in horror, and in front of them stood a massive figure that reeked of danger. Chen Yuan and Zhao Yuqi watched tensely as the guy with long hair, holding his bloody nose, dumbfoundedly said the woman's name. She erupted with rage and angrily declared that if she hadn't come here, she wouldn't have seen him cheating on her behind her own back. He immediately tried to justify himself, assuring her that he would never betray her, because everything he had belonged to her. In desperation, he grabbed the hooded girl by the arm and shouted that she had seduced him and was to blame for everything. The girl cried out in pain, lashing out, and responded by indignantly reminding him that he had called her himself and assured her that he was free. The hooded girl recoiled as the guy with long hair shouted at her in anger, clearly losing control of herself. She fell to her knees, staring at him shocked, while another person nearby exclaimed his name, stunned at what was happening. The guy's eyes flashed with rage, and he raised his hand sharply, moving forward threateningly as if preparing to strike. But before his palm could reach its target, someone quickly intercepted his wrist, stopping the movement. Chen Yuan squeezed his hand with a cold gaze and calmly asked if he wanted to embarrass himself even more. Chen Yuan firmly held his opponent's hand, and meanwhile, Lin Shutong realized with awe that he really cared for her. Somewhere in the air, a notification sounded. Her sympathy for Chen Yuan had passed 95 points, officially completing his goal. The system reported that Lin Shutong was now completely on his side, rewarding him with additional reinforcement points. His characterization information appeared in front of his eyes, and the system suggested that the bonuses he received be distributed into strength and physical fitness. Chen Yuan felt a surge of power, his gaze flashed with determination, and with ease, he threw his opponent to the ground. Chen Yuan easily threw his opponent away, but he jumped to his feet and grabbed the nearest bottle with a curse. The long-haired guy's eyes flashed with rage, and clutching the bottle in his hand, he shouted that he would kill him. Chen Yuan sighed indifferently, lightning intercepted his movement and threw him to the ground with force. He coldly stated that living off a woman was not shameful, but raising a hand on her was low. However, his opponent was not going to give up, and with a trembling hand, he slowly reached for the knife hidden under his jacket. Zhao Yuqi cried out in horror, warning Chen Yuan of the danger when she noticed the glint of the knife in her opponent's hand. The guy with long hair rushed forward with wild fury, but Chen Yuan lightning fast intercepted his wrist. In one sharp movement, he yanked him down and then threw him forcefully over his shoulder, causing him to cry out in pain. His opponent's body flew to the side with a clatter, knocking everything in its path and causing those watching to gasp in shock. Eventually, he crashed into the wall of the restaurant with a crash, breaking the silence with a resounding impact on the signboard. Chen Yuan's opponent lay on the ground with his eyes rolled back, mumbling something incoherent about the sun, the moon, and his superiority. A crowd gathered around, whispering about what had happened, while Chen Yuan stood in the center, eliciting admiring and surprised looks. The hooded girl suddenly rushed towards him, tearfully begging him to give her another chance, and admitted her mistake. Chen Yuan silently lowered his gaze, his face remaining impenetrable, as if he was weighing something in his thoughts. He softly said that the Chen Yuan she was talking about once ran 10 kilometers in the middle of the night to bring her to the hospital. Chen Yuan continued calmly, recalling how he had once saved up for 6 months for a phone for her, but his gift was not expensive enough. He pondered, perhaps that Chen Yuan was a fool who despite everything believed that she would ever come back. With a drooping head, he said that this person no longer existed, it was her choice, and now there was no turning back. Tears glistened in the girl's eyes, she realized that she had lost him forever, but there was nothing she could change. Later, Chen Yuan calmly said goodbye to Zhao Yuqi, apologizing for causing chaos, but she only smiled, suggesting to call her more simply. The woman looked at Chen Yuan carefully with a soft smile, pondering how much he had changed. Chen Yuan, relaxed and satisfied, offered to meet again and treat her next time. In the narrow frame, an image flashed with his pensive gaze, and next to it was the face of the same woman, slightly surprised. The city panorama spread out before his eyes, the lights of the skyscrapers flickering in the night, creating an atmosphere of calm before something important. A sudden loud sound broke the tranquility. The door swung open sharply, as if someone had burst inside. The door rattled open, and a drenched girl burst into the room, shivering with cold and tears. Another girl remarked with concern in her voice that Chen Yuan turned out to be a rich man, which surprised everyone. Shocked by what she heard, the drenched girl exclaimed, unable to believe that the amount was so huge. The girl explained that the rumor had spread through the dormitory and it was impossible not to hear it. The drenched girl's eyes widened with shock, her lips trembled, she couldn't believe it. The girl's eyes filled with tears, her lips trembled, and she sobbed uncontrollably while saying Chen Yuan's name. A loud howl echoed throughout the night city, making the people in the buildings wonder what was going on. The person holding the phone was shocked. Chen Yuan had shown incredible results in the game. His opponents looked at him in fury, accusing him of being a hidden cyber athlete since he was so strong. Chen Yuan only chuckled, noting to himself that after improving his performance, even the games had become enjoyable. Chen Yuan was calmly changing his clothes when his neighbor excitedly offered to stream and take him along. Looking at himself in the mirror, Chen Yuan realized that the improved characteristics had not only strengthened him, but also changed his body noticeably. He smirked, pondering that with this appearance, he could claim to be the university's top handsome man. Looking in the mirror, he wondered which girl would be able to truly appreciate his transformation. Suddenly, there was a shout from outside. His friend was impatiently asking if he had fallen into the toilet, because the phone kept ringing. Chen Yuan looked at the phone with surprise. Su Lala was calling so late, and it was alarming. He wondered what new tricks she could think of to somehow influence him. Pressing the answer button, he calmly asked why she was calling him and what she needed. She was sobbing desperately, calling his name and begging for help. Somewhere outside the window it was raining, dark clouds looming over the city, portending something unsettling. Outside the stage, bags and scattered belongings lay strewn about, creating a sense of chaos and anxiety. In the dimly lit room, a girl sat amidst the clutter, sobbing and repeating Chen Yuan's name. In a trembling voice, she begged to borrow 500,000 yuan, as if it was her only way out. The bright lights of the casino flashed before her eyes. Her father was in debt because of gambling. On his knees, with tears in his eyes, he begged for a little more time, promising to pay it all back. The girl sighed heavily, telling him that their once prosperous family was now drowning in debt. Chen Yuan did not hesitate to ask for her account number, intending to transfer the money immediately. In the same instant, her eyes opened wide with shock when she saw the message on the screen. With trembling fingers she checked the balance and realized that the amount was 10 times the requested amount. Looking at the incredible numbers, she stuttered with shock, but Chen Yuan calmly replied that it wasn't a problem for him. Somewhere else, someone shouted furiously, clearly not believing what was happening and losing their composure. Notifications flashed before Chen Yuan's eyes. Su Leilei's sympathy was rapidly growing with every passing moment. She closed her eyes while clutching the phone in her hands and sobbing, thanked him for being so generous. Outside, the rain continued to whip against the windows. The lighted building stood amidst the night weather. Chen Yuan frowned as he looked at the screen in front of him. 94 points was not enough to win the victory. Chen Yuan stared thoughtfully in front of him, pondering if it was finally time for him to come clean. A martial arts reflection surfaced in his mind. The first one to change his stance was at a disadvantage. Sunlight flooded the building. The morning of the new day had begun, as if foreshadowing important events. Outside the dormitory, Chen Yuan was hugging his friend with a smile when someone suddenly called his name. He turned around at the voice, squinting slightly, trying to figure out who exactly had called out to him. A girl appeared in front of Chen Yuan with a smile, holding out his breakfast and informing him that she had brought it from the canteen. Before he could reply, another girl approached with the same intention, surprising everyone around him. With a slight smirk, she offered him a home-cooked meal, hinting that she was preparing it especially for him. Their gazes met. Tension was building up. No one was going to give in to this unspoken battle. Chen Yuan found himself between the two girls who were blazing with rage, as if preparing for a real clash. Chen Yuan sighed when he heard someone call out to him again and prepared for another surprise. A girl appeared in front of him with a kind smile, holding out a bag and informing him that she had brought him beef noodles. Another onlooker froze in the shadows, unable to believe her eyes. How did Zhao Yuqi end up here? Under the spotlight, the girl stood in the ring wearing boxing gloves, as if preparing for a decisive fight. The two opponents looked at her anxiously as she exuded a strong pressure worthy of the second campus beauty. The two rivals looked at Zhao Yuqi with tension, feeling her intense pressure as she held out a bag of noodles. Chen Yuan was surprised, asking how she knew that this was his favorite dish. Zhao Yuqi explained with a slight smile that she had noticed his preference back during dinner last night. Chen Yuan noted to himself that she had guessed his taste without further ado just by observing the details. Zhao Yuqi confidently added that when bringing breakfast, it was important to consider the other person's tastes, causing her rivals to be annoyed. Zhao Yuqi burst forward lightning fast, attacking her opponent with a powerful kick. The strong kick split the ice beneath her feet, forcing both girls to fight a swift duel. Later, with a soft smile, Zhao Yuqi held out a small gift to Chen Yuan as a token of gratitude. Chen Yuan looked at the box with surprise, realizing that it was the newest model of an expensive smartphone. The crowd of observers exploded with emotion. Seeing him receive such a gift was more painful than losing his own father. The crowd froze in shock. Zhao Yuqi's gift was worth more than 10,000 yuan. Her generosity was astounding. At the same moment, the tension peaked. A powerful punch sent one of the girls into a knockout. Chen Yuan calmly remarked that it wasn't worth spending so much, but since the gift was given, he would accept it. The university building towered under the clear sky, concealing many intertwining stories. The girl gazed pensively into the distance, pondering whether it was really that difficult to win back Chun Yuan's favor. Lin Shutong thought with despair that it had only been a few days and already another Zhao Yuqi had appeared. Su Lala confidently approached her, offering her privacy for a serious conversation. Lin Shutong flared up in anger, stating that she saw no point in discussing anything after everything that had happened. But after a moment, a smile appeared on her lips and she briefly agreed, hinting at her hidden intentions. With a slight smirk, she offered to talk about an alliance, but Su Lala had clearly not expected such a turn. An alliance was made. Their common goal was to oppose Zhao Yuqi, who now seemed to be the main obstacle. Against the backdrop of the campus, Chen Yuan thoughtfully twirled the new phone in his hands, marveling at the generosity of the gift. He noted to himself that Zhao Yuqi did not hesitate to give him such an expensive item that cost over 10,000 yuan. She asked with a slight smile if everything was alright, but Chen Yuan assured that the device was working perfectly. Looking at the screen, he grinned. If it wasn't for the measly 40 sympathy points, he might have thought she had fallen in love. Chen Yuan pondered that the world was full of greedy creatures, and sometimes the hunter became the prey. He realized that he needed to find a way to speed up the process and push the situation a little further. A message from Xiao Meyer appeared on the phone screen, explaining that her fear did not mean rejection. Chen Yuan smirked, pondering if it was really an apology if it wasn't accompanied by at least a couple of pictures. The screen flashed again, confirming her words, but Chen Yuan already knew how to turn things in his favor. An invitation appeared on the screen. The mysterious Dragon King was calling Chen Yuan to a closed elite chat room. Chen Yuan eyed the message with interest, wondering if this was indeed the same legendary group. As soon as he joined, the participants immediately started discussing him, marveling at his status. One of the interlocutors admiringly noted his wealth and suggested that he was engaged in a lucrative business. Chen Yuan grinned, realizing that these powerful people wanted to test him, but he was willing to play by their rules. Chen Yuan looked at the message. The person talking to him hinted that he wanted to discuss things in person and asked him to add him as a friend. As soon as the request was accepted, the correspondence continued, and it was clear that the conversation was taking a more serious turn. An image of the city appeared on the screen, an elite neighborhood where each villa was worth tens of millions. Looking at this, Chen Yuan frowned, realizing that this was a really big deal. Soon he headed towards it, and a girl could already be seen in the distance, clearly waiting for him to approach. A luxurious building rose among the greenery, emphasizing the wealth and status of its owners. Inside at the table, the men were tensely discussing Chen Yuan, wondering if he was actually considering a purchase. One of them calmly remarked that even if they were wrong, a friendship with someone who could easily manage millions was always beneficial. With a sly smile, the other offered to send Chen Yuan an address to learn more about him. Meanwhile, the sun was rising over the campus, illuminating a new morning full of hidden intrigue. Chang Yuan scrutinized the message on the phone screen, which included a specific address. The girl wondered how great the gratitude could be if you gave someone an entire villa as a gift. The city spread out before them in the soft light of day, foreshadowing something important. She curiously asked Chang Yuan why he had brought her to this place so mysteriously. Near the luxurious building, two people looked at the approaching guests in surprise. The two people at the entrance hurriedly addressed the guests, assuming that Mr. Smoke was in front of them and apologizing for disturbing them. Chang Yuan calmly observed the situation, and the man thought that he looked ordinary, but his companion was incredibly beautiful, and could he be the son of an influential family? His companion's gaze became tense, and he realized that it would be difficult to agree on a price today. The man introduced himself as Hong Yuan Xiao, told him that he owned a small business, but due to financial difficulties, he was forced to sell the villa. With a smile, he invited Chang Yuan and his companion to come inside, opening the doors in front of them. Hong Yuan Xiao gestured for Chang Yuan to look around the villa, explaining that it was 500 square meters in size. He continued, noting that the total usable area of the house reached 2,000 square meters, and the interior was designed by renowned designers and furnished with exclusive Italian furniture. He proudly pointed out the panoramic view, admiring the location of the house and the excellent feng shui, noting that if it were not for financial difficulties, he would never have sold this property. Chang Yuan's companion was shocked by the scale of the villa, wondering if he was really going to buy it, as the price was probably in the tens of millions. Chang Yuan calmly stated that the place suited him, and demanded that he not waste time and name the price right away. Hong Yuan Xiao admitted with a smile that he needed the money, but the place was in demand. He mentioned that the real price for him is 50 million, but he will name 60 for bargaining. Chang Yuan sighed disappointedly, and the man worried if he had overestimated the price. Yuan indifferently agreed, surprising everyone by saying that 60 million was a small thing to him. The seller inwardly panicked, wishing he had asked for 70 or even 80 million. Chong Yuan looked at Yuchi and asked if they should buy this house. She was confused by such a question and replied that she didn't care whether to buy it or not. Yuan, looking straight into her eyes, calmly stated that this house was purchased for her. Hong Yuanqiao was stunned, realizing how much resources and determination it took to do such a thing. Yuchi tried to comprehend what she had heard in shock, thinking that even a rich man should have held back. Yuchi smiled awkwardly, admitting that such an offer sounded too serious and she couldn't accept it. Chong Yuan gently took her hand, gently telling her to listen to him. He reminded her that there were restrictions on real estate ownership now, and he had too many houses. Looking at her, Yuan suggested that he simply put one of them in her name. With a warm smile, he added that he sincerely wanted to give her a real house. Yuchi widened her eyes in embarrassment, stunned by Chong Yuan's words. She wondered, after all, this kind of real estate transfer was usually only done by legitimate spouses. Yuan moved closer and softly said that there should be no boundaries between them. Everything belonged to him and her. Yuchi blushed, her sympathy for him visibly increased, as if the level of trust had increased in the game. Yuan mentally grinned, confident that his acting skills were worthy of an Oscar. The woman lightly nudged Hong Yuanqiao, hinting that he could also give her such a gift. She smilingly asked when he would finally give her something equally generous. Hong Yuanqiao sweated in panic, thinking that he couldn't even afford such a gesture. Chong Yuan calmly put his card to the terminal, making a $10 million deposit. He assured that he would transfer the remaining amount after processing, and the seller agreed, promising to finalize the deal in the coming days. Hong Yuanqiao and his secretary escorted Chong Yuan with a glance, realizing how rich he was. They were surprised that such a man preferred to ride a cab, as if hiding his fortune. The woman thoughtfully noted that he was still young and asked if he needed a secretary. Chong Yuan mentally analyzed the situation, confident that his investment in Yuchi would bring a huge profit. Yuchi furtively watched him, pondering that if the laws of romance were to be followed, something awkward was about to happen. Yuchi's eyes sparkled, a warm feeling of admiration for Chong Yuan swept over her. She began to daydream, imagining what a caring and generous husband he could be. Thoughts of a wedding arose in her mind. Would it be in Milan or in the snowy Alps? Her fantasies were interrupted when Chong Yuan announced that they had arrived at the venue. The majestic universities spread out in front of them, awaiting their next steps. Yuchi asked Chong Yuan in surprise why he wasn't getting out of the car with her. He calmly explained that his neighbor had called him to an internet cafe, and she could return on her own. The girl, dumbfounded by this turn of events, stared at the departing cab, feeling disappointed. The car stopped outside the building, and Yuan quietly got out without any embarrassment. Once inside, he smiled at his friends, and they grudgingly asked why he was taking so long. The friends complained to Chong Yuan that they had lost without him and asked him to take his seat sooner. He went to the counter to open his gaming account, but suddenly heard someone say his name. Su Lei was standing in front of him, and he asked in surprise what she was doing in this place. She explained with a smile that her father owned a chain of internet cafes, and this hall belonged to him. Encouraged by the encounter, Lei offered to buy him a drink or even give him a lifetime pass. Suddenly the door swung open with a clatter, and everyone in the internet cafe froze at the noise. A tall man with a chain around his neck stepped forward, demanding that Su Lala repay her father's debt. She desperately objected that she had already paid the 5 million, but the bandit only smirked. Lei erupted with rage, accusing them of fraud and extortion. The criminal roughly grabbed her, claiming that she could work off the debt at his nightclub. Chong Yuan coldly warned the bandit that he wasn't angry yet, but the man had better leave. Su Lala desperately called out to him for help, her eyes sparkling with hope. The gang leader grinned viciously, calling Yuan a rat-meddling dog, and ordered an attack. Yuan didn't move, deftly blocking his opponent's punch and clutching his arm. Gathering all his strength, he sent the bandit flying with a powerful punch, crushing him with a single movement. Chong Yuan's friends were shocked to recognize his punch as a move from their favorite game. In their imagination, the fight turned into a spectacular duel, as if it had been transported from the virtual world. They realized that real masters could translate their game skills into real life. The gang leader, holding his battered face, threatened Yuan and hurriedly fled. Su Lala rushed to Yuan, hugging him tightly, trembling from the fear she had experienced. The system notified Chong Yuan that Su Lala's favor had reached 95, earning him bonus points. Yuan noted with satisfaction that the day had indeed been a success and now needed to properly distribute the rewards. Suddenly, there was a shout from Yuchi, accusing Lala of being deceitful and treacherous. Another girl indignantly declared that Lei was secretly winning Chong Yuan's favor all by herself. Yuan, ignoring the argument, mentally ordered the system to add all the points to strength and agility. Chong Yuan's friends irritatedly remarked that he had cleverly slipped away, leaving them to deal with the situation. A crowd of students had gathered in the stadium, creating a lively atmosphere before the upcoming event. Yuan mentally noted that he had successfully attracted the attention of Lin Xiaotong and Su Lele, which meant that President Zhao was the next target. Immersed in thought, he was interrupted by a stern voice asking him not to interrupt. A girl in a sports uniform stood in front of him, explaining that the stadium was temporarily closed for the race. Chong Yuan noted to himself that despite the stern tone, the girl seemed honest and straightforward. With a smile, he agreed to give up his seat, but asked for her WeChat number to add as a friend. Suddenly, the other girl shrieked, trying to stop what was happening in front of her. A tall guy with a menacing expression declared that he was her boyfriend and demanded Yuan to leave. Yuan narrowed his eyes, scrutinizing him carefully, feeling that he had met this person before. Memories flashed before Chong Yuan's eyes. This man had once humiliated him. The guy had roughly pinned him to the ground, taunting that Yuan was unworthy of pursuing Zhou Zhuai. The moment when his face was pressed into the dirt, stripping him of any dignity, flashed back in his mind. The rough voice rang out again, suggesting that Yuan forget his dreams and accept reality. Yuan clenched his fists and his eyes lit up with rage. Fate had brought him together with his enemy once again. The system notified Chong Yuan that a new operation had begun and awarded him 22 reinforcement points. Yuan grinned, finding the situation amusing, for these points could come in handy in the upcoming race. The referee signaled ready, and Yuan's main rival confidently kneaded his muscles before starting. A girl in a sports uniform was loudly cheering his rival, calling him husband and admiring him. The spectators were surprised to notice that someone suddenly sat down on the track outside the starting line. A shot from the starting gun rips the air, and the athletes scramble out of their seats, rushing forward. The crowd of runners rushes down the track, some screaming with exertion, pushing themselves as hard as they can. The race leader smirks as he looks at his rivals and dismissively throws out that they are nothing but pathetic bugs. Suddenly, the wind whistles behind him as someone rushes forward at an incredible speed. The leader's eyes widen with shock, his heart skips a beat, he can't believe his eyes. Chong Yuan easily overtakes Li Yong, leaving him completely bewildered. A powerful push kick kicks up a cloud of dust, making the air shake with intense energy. Chong Yuan casts a defiant look and assures that he will defeat Li Yong in his best discipline. Li Yong clenches his fists, his eyes full of rage. He will not allow himself to be humiliated like this. A flash of light envelopes his body, the seal is broken, and his left leg is filled with golden power. Li Yong arrogantly declares that he will show his true strength, but suddenly loses sight of Chong Yuan. Turning his head, he is startled to notice that Chong Yuan is already overtaking him on his left. Li Yong is shocked. His opponent has run an entire lap in a matter of moments. Chong Yuan smirks, assuring him that a week's worth of strategic skill pumping surpasses decades of normal training. The crowd of onlookers erupts into shouts of delight, shocked that he circled the field in just 50 seconds. The crowd greets Chong Yuan with a deafening ovation, showering him with confetti and ribbons of victory. The girl in red stares at him stunned, unable to believe that Li Yong has lost. The commentator announces that there is a new champion who has surpassed even the limits of human ability. The coach is impressed with Chong Yuan's abilities and suggests he join the national team. Li Yong shouts in desperation to the coach, reminding him that the spot should have gone to him. Chong Yuan looks at Li Yong with a cold sneer, not hiding his overwhelming aura. The girl wonders why she felt something strange about Chong Yuan at some point. Li Yong notices her thoughtfulness and asks what she's thinking about, but gets an evasive answer. She awkwardly accepts a bottle of water from him, and their mutual understanding seems to grow a little. At this time, Chong Yuan stands in the shadows outside the building, smiling thoughtfully in the semi-darkness. The young man is surprised when the girl in white suddenly asks where she's been all this time. She happily informs him that Chong Yuan has bought her a house, which leaves him completely confused. The girl enthusiastically says she's going to see the house with Chong Yuan, smiling dreamily. The young man ponders why he's having such bad luck, until he notices something strange on his phone. His eyes widen with shock. There's an article on the screen accusing Chong Yuan of having affairs with multiple girls. The young man stares at his phone in shock, unable to believe his eyes. Chong Yuan is being called a scoundrel. Chong Yuan reads the accusations and smirks, stating that it's slander and he's too generous for such a thing. He frowns, realizing that he has become too visible and someone clearly wants to hurt him. Somewhere in the shadows, a question of publication is heard, and a bird perches on the balcony railing as if sending a message. A group of people gloatingly discuss the viral post, certain that Chong Yuan's reputation is now destroyed. In a room with curtained windows, three guys are excitedly staring into the screen when they are suddenly interrupted. They nervously excuse themselves to the person who enters, explaining that they are working on a plan against Chong Yuan. A familiar face flashes on the laptop screen, and the new man recognizes him as a participant in the recent race. He squints, remembering that he once beat Chong Yuan and is now annoyed by his popularity. With a smirk, he states that he's known him since childhood and is sure that Chong Yuan is just pretending to be a nice guy. In a dark room, a group of guys are happily discussing Chong Yuan, coming up with more and more accusations. One of them declares with burning eyes that it doesn't matter who won the race, he wants to destroy Chong Yuan. Soon a post appears online, making him look like a scoundrel involved in multiple affairs. Additional insider information claims that his behavior was worse than the usual scheming. People at the university are horrified to read the rumors, and outrage begins to build among the girls. Someone's hand strikes the table with force. The accusations against Chong Yuan cause great indignation. The angry man declares that he will not tolerate such a student in his institution and will personally deal with it. Somewhere in the shadows, they discuss Chong Yuan, calling him a special person with a mysterious past. Against the starry sky, a figure in black strikes a blow at the villain, claiming to hate those who hurt women. The crowd watches, and someone whispers the legend of the mysterious crime fighter. The legend of the mysterious protector of the city continues to spread, describing him as a powerful and mysterious guardian. In the interrogation room, a girl confidently declares that Chong Yuan is a hero, causing bewilderment among those present. The officers ask suspiciously if this is too loud a statement, and what her opinion is based on. She calmly replies that she relies on her intuition, as if certain she is right. The two men discuss her words, doubting but recognizing that she is not prone to lying. The two men continue their discussion, but one of them irritably demands to interview Chong Yuan's classmates again. Bells ring out across the campus as the guards begin a new investigation. One of them asks the girl to testify, specifying that they want information about Chong Yuan. She sobs, calling Chong Yuan a good man, but regrets not being good enough for him. Her voice shaking with emotion, she asks for more paper, confessing that her heart breaks at the thought of him. The interrogation continues, and the guard is surprised that the girl still thinks Chong Yuan is good despite his rejection. She sobs, admitting that he hasn't done anything wrong, but just doesn't love her. The man in dark clothes silently walks away to his office, leaving the watcher pondering. He lights a cigarette and glumly wonders if Chong Yuan has been slandered on purpose for the sake of someone else's interests. On the street, two passers-by notice someone carrying a banner and wonder what's going on. The university director greets the strangers and asks who they are looking for and why they are here. The woman introduces herself and says she wants to present the banner to Chong Yuan as a token of appreciation for his help. Hearing a familiar name, the dark-clothed man is startled. Chong Yuan again, but this time with praise. He doubts his conclusions, deciding to reread the posts to see if he was wrong. Opening his phone, he sees a new comment where someone sarcastically writes that if Chong Yuan is a scoundrel, there must be more scoundrels like him. Videos of Chong Yuan appear online, footage from the race and the moment of his triumph on the podium. The comments under the posts are flooded with enthusiastic messages where girls discuss his looks and style. The man with the phone is dumbfounded. All the comments are coming from girls, as if Chong Yuan has become their idol. Someone compares him to fast and graceful falcons, emphasizing his uniqueness and talent. A joke is played in the company of students, causing laughter and blushing faces while someone protests indignantly. A person who is too good easily becomes a target for attacks and pressure from those around him. In the flashback, a strict teacher with a cold stare declares that he no longer wants to teach such a student. A man in dark clothes is reading something on his phone, his eyes fill with tears, and he whispers that he now understands Chong Yuan. He resolutely looks out the window, promising to bring justice and prove the talented student's innocence. Meanwhile, a crowd of people gathers in front of the building where an important event is apparently about to begin. The crowd of students comes to a standstill when a man announces that the accusations against Chong Yuan have been proven false and are slander. He declares emphatically that he has come to restore justice and clear Chong Yuan's name in front of everyone. Looking at him with admiration, he praises his noble character and sincere desire to help people. Excitedly continuing his speech, he urges everyone to learn from Chong Yuan and strive to benefit society. The audience erupts into wild applause, cheering his words that Chong Yuan is worthy of emulation. Chong Yuan stares at the certificate handed to him in confusion, not understanding why he is being honored. In the crowd, someone in the crowd clenches their fists with rage, not believing that he has escaped disgrace and is now being recognized. Li Yang is seething with anger, mentally accusing the teachers and principal of blindness, because the award should have gone to him. Suddenly, an admiring voice is heard among the audience, and Li Yang is surprised to see that it's Jiyin. Chong Yuan is stunned by what is happening when something changes in his relationship with those around him, raising the level of favor. The girl in the sports uniform applauds enthusiastically, her respect for Chong Yuan increasing even more. In the distance, there is a panoramic view of the university where the ceremony has just ended. Li Yong catches up to the girl with a frown on his face and demands an explanation as to why she was so actively supporting Chong Yuan. She smilingly replies that she simply admires his actions and doesn't understand why Li Yan is so jealous. Continuing with confidence, she lists Chong Yuan's good deeds, emphasizing that he remains indifferent to fame. The girl speaks enthusiastically of Chong Yuan, emphasizing that he could have enjoyed fame but remained humble. Li Yong, seized with rage, abruptly cuts her off, shouting that Chong Yuan can never defeat him. Suddenly, he grabs her arm, causing pain, and she cries out in fright, demanding him to let her go. Li Yong, eyes burning with anger, hisses that Chong Yuan is nothing and his opinion means nothing. He contemptuously states that money and power rule this world, and his father can buy him anything. Chong Yuan calmly allowed Lao Hong to pass, his voice sounding confident and unemotional. He irritably recalled how he had asked him not to attract attention, but the driver had violated the request again. The wheels of the car came to an abrupt stop, raising a light smoke, and the body of the car glistened in the sun. Chong Yuan sternly reminded the driver of the request, and the driver hastily assured that he would be more careful in the future. Suddenly, someone loudly warned Mr. Smokey, his voice sounding tense, hinting at possible danger. The sudden warning was still echoing in his head as the car sped off down the road. The girl, with a sad expression on her face, firmly stated that they were breaking up because he didn't trust her. The man shouted in panic that it was impossible, not believing what was happening and not wanting to let her go. A tall building loomed in the distance, giving the atmosphere of an important place where something significant was about to happen. Her hand confidently swiped the bank card through the terminal, and the screen lit up with a green confirmation signal. The screen of the device flashed a notification of a large sum transfer, confirming the completion of an important transaction. Chong Yuan calmly said that once the payment was settled, he would go back to school. He reflected that despite buying the house, it was important for him to win President Zhao's favor. The thought of giving the girl something else as a gift flashed through his mind, and he began to look for options. His fingers slid quickly across the screen, looking through the correspondence and studying what else Lao Hong was selling. Chong Yuan read the posts in the group where everyone was discussing his generosity and incredible wealth. He replied with a slight smile that he was just giving a little help, not thinking it was anything special. Someone offered to buy him a car, mentioning useful connections that could arrange a favorable deal. Chong Yuan suddenly realized that he could give the girl a car as a gift, and the idea encouraged him. A modern car dealership loomed in front of him, promising a luxurious selection and a new opportunity to surprise her. Zhang Haotian appeared in front of Chong Yuan, confidently introducing himself as the owner of the small car dealership. Chong Yuan's gaze lingered on the building with Zhang Group's logo, confirming the importance of the company. He noticed that Zhang Haotian was clearly from a wealthy family, and his business was much larger than it appeared. With a slight smile, Chong Yuan praised his interlocutor for his success, but there was a sneer in his voice. Zhang Haotian embarrassedly asked not to be called brother and invited him to inspect the cars in the showroom. Zhang Haotian accompanied Chong Yuan around the car showroom, impressed by his charisma and youthfulness. He proudly declared that his place had the most complete collection of luxury cars in the city. Chong Yuan announced without hesitation that he wanted to buy a Bugatti Chiron, surprising his interlocutor. Zhang Haotian froze in shock, dumbfoundedly trying to figure out if this request was seriously made. Smiling nervously, he explained that it was a rare car, produced in only 20 copies. Chong Yuan calmly clarified that they did not have the Bugatti Chiron, and his question sounded like a death blow. Without waiting for an answer, he began to name other rare models, each word seemingly killing Zhang Haotian. He tried to justify himself by explaining that their car dealership offered cars in the range of up to 80 million. Chong Yuan frustratedly remarked that there was nothing worthy, hinting at the modest scale of the business. Zhang Haotian smirked, thinking that since Chong Yuan could buy houses, it wasn't a fact that he could pull off such cars. Zhang Haotian confidently stated that although he didn't have any rare cars, he still had one expensive model. With a dramatic gesture, he pulled down the cover, solemnly presenting his Ferrari LaFerrari. Bright lights illuminated the powerful engine, capable of producing 588 kilowatts and accelerating in 3 seconds. The total cost of the car was 22.5 million yuan, emphasizing its exclusivity and prestige. Zhang Haotian asked with a sly smile how Chong Yuan was going to respond to such a challenge. Chong Yuan reasoned that although the Ferrari was not the most expensive, it would still be suitable as a gift. He agreed to the price without hesitation, praised Zhang Haotian for his efforts, and offered to pay for the purchase. Zhang Haotian froze in shock, but quickly pulled himself together and hastily agreed to formalize the transaction. At this moment, Chong Yuan glanced at his phone, seeing an unexpected incoming call from Lu Wenjie. Somewhere else, a man was shouting into the phone in a rage, as if he had lost control of himself. Lu Wenjie recalled how on his birthday, Liao Jia said she went with her friend to get her nails done. Excited, he took an umbrella and hurried towards her, not wanting her to get caught in the rain. However, a heartbreaking scene appeared before his eyes. She was passionately kissing another man. Lu Wenjie bitterly cried out that in the 3 years of their relationship, he had already planned to introduce her to his parents. Chong Yuan bewilderedly stopped him, pointing out that he had already drained 8 bottles of Pocari Sweat. Chong Yuan watched as Lu Wenjie, breaking down into a scream, desperately asked if he could bring Liao Jia back. With an expression of firm determination, Chong Yuan abruptly said that the mistake was not his, but hers, demanding that he maintain his dignity. Lu Wenjie, with his head lowered, quietly admitted that he understood everything but couldn't accept it. His footsteps were heavy, and abrasions could be seen on his legs, as if they were traces of the pain and frustration he had endured. Chong Yuan watched him carefully, asking the important question of whether he thought Liao Jia was just mistaken or still a bad person. Chong Yuan coldly glanced at the phone, deciding that it was time to teach Liao Jia a serious lesson. Lu Wenjie anxiously asked what he was up to and who he was going to call at a time like this. Chong Yuan confidently stated that if he was trusted, he would make Liao Jia repent on his knees. On the other end of the line, Zhang Haotian cheerfully assured that he would do whatever was required of him. Lu Wenjie listened to the conversation with bewilderment, suspecting that something not entirely pure was involved. Chong Yuan dialed Lu Li's number with a smile, inquiring if she was free tonight. Lu Wenjie watched him in surprise, thinking that it was as if his friend had changed in a short time. The bright lights of the street illuminated the meeting place, creating the atmosphere of an evening city full of life. Lu happily rushed over to Chong Yuan, hugging him and enthusiastically saying how much she missed him. Lu Wenjie looked at them stunned, realizing that Chong Yuan was now the one surrounded by care. Chong Yuan introduced Lulu to his friend, and Lu Wenjie, slightly nervous, hurriedly said hello. Lulu asked thoughtfully if he had invited her this late just to meet his friends. Her eyes lit up as she decided that Chong Yuan trusted her and wanted to bring her into his circle. Chong Yuan explained with a smirk that he had another reason: he was asking for her help. Somewhere at this time, a mysterious man in luxurious clothes walked forward confidently, preparing to meet her. The woman stunnedly looked in front of her, unable to believe her eyes, and said Lu Wenjie's name with shock. A man in expensive clothes mockingly declared that he had almost hit the new car he had bought for her. Another observer wondered in amazement, how did Lu Wenjie change so much? Is he really a hidden rich man? The woman pressed her lips together, clearly pensive, as if she had suddenly started to reconsider her attitude towards him. The man laughed scornfully, calling her a barking dog, and motioned for his companion to get into the car. The woman angrily stated that she had known Lu Wenjie for a long time and his behavior today disgusted her. In the car, Chong Yuan calmly noted that she had finally figured it out, but it was too late. Traffic was starting to move on the winding mountain highway, promising that the main spectacle was about to unfold. Luxury cars lined up in a row, creating a tense atmosphere before the upcoming race. A man with gray hair greeted Lu Wenjie with a smirk, surprised that he was here. The man in an elegant suit stepped forward, asking with a chuckle if his old acquaintances would recognize him. He laughed loudly, mocking the guy who pretended to be a rich heir of the coal mines. The woman listened in amazement as he was unmasked and another man assured him he was a common liar. The boy panically begged not to be harmed, clinging helplessly to his accuser's sleeve. The woman stood in a daze as the words about her unworthiness for rich people rattled around in her head. The man behind the wheel soothed his companion, promising that she would not be happy with the loser Lu Wenjie. She coldly replied that words meant nothing and warned him to take care of her. On the highway, cars rushed forward, one of them abruptly overtook, creating a dangerous situation. The driver inside the car roared with rage, hitting the pedal and demanding to drive more carefully. Angrily shouting insults, he leaned out of the window, not noticing the collision looming ahead. Lulu looked dazzling, her elegance overshadowing even the shine of the luxury car. The boy in fear begged his sister to forgive him, but she shouted with rage that he was worse than an animal. The man in the coat calmly said let's go and confidently walked away, paying no attention to what was happening. The woman reached out her hand in desperation, begging Lu Wenjie not to abandon her at such a moment. She tried to justify herself, saying that she wasn't chasing wealth, but was simply afraid of poverty. Lu Wenjie coldly turned away, suppressively telling her not to call him that again. He firmly stated that from this day forward, it was over between them and forbade her from contacting him again. A crowd of people were watching, and the guy in the center looked awkward and embarrassed. People approached him asking where he was going, suspecting he was trying to escape. Chong Yuan said with a smirk that it was okay to let him go, but first he had to slap himself 100 times. People gathered on the road, surrounded by luxury cars, when suddenly loud claps sounded, attracting attention. The crowd was enjoying the dazzling stage lights and the music was rattling, making it feel like a real celebration. Shots were raised at the table, one of the guests happily celebrating his good fortune to meet the influential Mr. Yen. Jan thanked everyone for their support, but he was immediately assured that formalities were not necessary among friends. The interlocutor spoke with interest about Yongzong's prowess on the Shark Live platform and asked for his help. The interlocutor mentioned that he had heard about Yongzong's prowess on the Shark Live platform and wanted to ask him for a favor, which immediately attracted attention. The man explained his request with a smirk. He had a favorite streamer that he wanted to support, but he had spent all his money this month and hoped that Yonga would help. Yanjun chuckled to himself, anticipating the development. Rich people too often underestimate others. Another person intervened, assuring Yonga that it was just a joke, and then with a smile, suggested that they relax and have fun. Meanwhile, someone was already active. At the table, a person was working intently at a keyboard, clearly preparing for something important. There was tension around the table. One of the people present asked if someone wanted to fight, hinting at a possible conflict. Someone lightly responded to the situation, noting that it was just about sending gifts, after all. Yanjun nonchalantly handed over his phone, saying that he was going to the restroom and was free to use his account. He even added that he didn't need to worry about money, let them spend as much as they wanted. The man with the phone was amazed. Was he really allowed to dispose of someone else's account without restrictions? The man who received the phone smirked and decided to take full advantage of the opportunity, preparing to spend money without restrictions. Meanwhile, Chong Yuan pondered while in the restroom. If he were asked to pay the bill, he definitely wouldn't be thrilled. He calmly remarked that he wasn't tired of wasting gifts. After all, it was the system that paid for everything anyway. Another man was standing nearby, clearly unaware of anything important, whistling a tune and in a good mood. And somewhere completely different, in an unknown space, a giant dragon suddenly appeared, exuding incredible power. Chong Yuan looked suspiciously at the stranger beside him, puzzled as to who he was. Meanwhile, in the crowd, someone was loudly counting out numbers, urging them to speed up. The numbers continued to grow, causing a stir. The crowd shouted even louder, marveling at what was happening, and Chong Yuan stepped closer and noticed that everyone was focused on the screen. Chong Yuan abruptly intervened, demanding an explanation as to why there was such a commotion and what was the reason for everyone's excitement. The man holding the phone rushed towards him with panic, begging Mr. Yong to save the child. Chong Yuan looked at the phone with disappointment, indignantly stating that he had only managed to raise 20 million in his absence, which was too weak. The crowd looked around stunned, some wondering incredulously who Yong really was if his family was richer than the banks. The man in the white suit exhaled nervously, realizing that on a normal day, he only managed to earn a few tens of thousands, but here, the amount had exceeded millions. Chong Yuan thoughtfully muttered that 20 million sounded unconvincing and suggested rounding up to an even 60 million. The man in white cried out in panic, begging Yong to stop, assuring him that the girl didn't deserve that much money, and Yong himself clearly had a divine gift. Chong Yuan smirked and nudged the man in white, suggesting that he toast to Boss Yong. After all, becoming rich is so easy, today he would let him enjoy it a little. The man in white didn't argue and gave in, sincerely stating that he would follow Honorable Brother Yen from now on. All around, the fun continued as people drank, noisily cheering each other on as the atmosphere grew more and more heated. At a nearby table, influential people were being discussed, noticing that the man with gray hair who had just had a drink with was Bai Qilin from White Real Estate. Chong Yuan was staring at his phone pensively when someone at a neighboring table mentioned admiringly about the mysterious Brother Yen who had become a legend by spending billions. Chong Yuan raised his glass and announced with a smile that he had business to attend to, so he was leaving, but offered to meet next time. In the crowd, someone asked in surprise if Boss Yong was leaving so quickly because he didn't want to pay the bill. Others immediately laughed, reminding him that with his wealth, comparing his annual income to his pocket money was ridiculous. Meanwhile, Chong Yuan was walking down the street, texting on his phone. Someone was waiting to meet him in Seoul, and he had agreed to see him tomorrow. He smirked, pondering that after being ignored for so long, it was time to harvest the favor. The plane landed at the airport, heralding someone's arrival and the beginning of a new phase of events. The girl, contemplating the upcoming meeting, confidently decided that a little charm and everything would go according to her plan. She walked forward with a smile, thinking that rich Brother Yong would end up being just another fish in her pond. A long message appeared on Chong Yuan's phone, someone begging for a fresh start, admitting their mistakes and promising to make amends. A voice sounded nearby, someone inquiring as to what Brother Yong was looking at so pensively. Chong Yuan deleted the message without hesitation and blocked the sender's number, not intending to waste another second on it. Sitting in the cafe, he brushed off the question, replying with a chuckle that someone was just thinking about nonsense. He then looked at the person he was talking to with a smile and asked her again what she had just said. The girl mentally resented, unable to believe that even her beauty couldn't shake Chong Yuan's indifference. A notification popped up on the screen. Her name was Su Yihan, and despite everything, she was confident that she could win him over. A notification popped up on the screen. Su Yihan's level of favor with Chong Yuan was 60 points, but it was too high, so communication was impossible. Chong Yuan clutched his head in annoyance, puzzled at how this was possible, and whether his money had gone to waste. He smirked, fake yawned, and declared that he was actually just an unemployed vagrant. Su Yihan asked in surprise, then where did he get the confidence to fiddle around with money if he didn't have a company? Chong Yuan stretched lazily and calmly admitted that all the money he spent was his father's, but now his family was in debt. Su Yihan flared up in annoyance and said that she was only dating Chong Yuan to get some of the gift money back. Chong Yuan looked at her skeptically, sneering that demanding a refund was a pathetic behavior unworthy of a man. Su Yihan shrieked in rage as she realized that she was wasting her time on such a loser, and her level of favor plummeted. Grabbing her phone, she immediately called Brother Lon, begging him to come over urgently because she was being annoyed by the pathetic type. Chong Yuan clenched his fingers and grinned. He had met practical women, but this kind of brazen lie was new to him. The plane landed in the city, marking the arrival of a new character who seemed about to intervene in the situation. A tall man in pink clothes strode forward confidently, angrily declaring that no one dared to molest his woman on his territory. Su Yihan's face immediately changed upon seeing him, as if she had found salvation in the person of Brother Lon. She rushed towards him, exclaiming exaggeratedly that she was terribly frightened and even hurt by the pervert's touch. However, Brother Lon, instead of comforting her, struck Su Yihan with a swing, clearly not sharing her drama. Brother Lon smiled broadly, wondering why Chong Yuan was here as well. He cheerfully introduced himself, recalling that he had been among those toasting him with brother by yesterday. Chong Yuan remembered him and easily shook his hand while Lon enthusiastically offered to treat him today. Su Yihan froze in shock, not understanding why Brother Lon was suddenly so polite to Chong Yuan. She nervously realized that Lon was a member of Seoul's elite, connected to big business, and his reaction meant a lot. Brother Lon leaned back irritably, accusing Su Yihan of being stupid and revealing that Chong Yuan is his older brother's older brother. He added that Chong Yuan had so much money that he could support her entire family without difficulty. Su Yihan opened her eyes wide, realizing that she had just possibly failed the most important chance of her life. She pressed her lips together, firmly resolving that she must urgently rectify the situation and regain the lost moment. Gathering herself, she softened her voice, looking at Chong Yuan with a smile, and timidly apologized to him. The connection between Su Yihan and Chong Yuan was successfully established, and her ranking was strengthened by 25 points. Chong Yuan, calmly sipping his tea, brushed off her apology, saying that he was just teasing her. Su Yihan burst out in joy, eyes shining, and enthusiastically declared that Chong Yuan was now her favorite. Chong Yuan grinned to himself, realizing that her affection was growing like yeast, and he wouldn't just let her go. However, Brother Lon suddenly exploded, resenting that, after all, Chong Yuan was treating his brother to nothing but soy milk. Brother Lon enthusiastically offered to celebrate their unexpected meeting and treat Chong Yuan to a nice restaurant. Chong Yuan nodded, assuring that since they were brothers, he would certainly give them the respect they deserved. As he got into the car, Su Yihan screamed in panic, demanding to wait for her so she could go too. The car sped down the road toward the high-rises of the city, and a tense silence hung inside the cabin. Su Yihan approached Chong Yuan, gently placed her hand on his shoulder, and pleadingly asked if he was still angry. Chong Yuan calmly looked at the phone and chuckled, saying that Su Yihan was worrying too much for no reason. She noticed that he had opened the Shark Live platform and anxiously wondered what he was going to do. Suddenly, her face contorted in horror. She realized that Chong Yuan was planning something crazy. With frantic speed, he began clicking on the screen, sending endless expensive gifts, while Su Yihan panically tried to stop him. On the platform screen, thousands of rockets flashed with bright lights, shocking the viewers with their enormity. The girl on the screen counted the number of gifts in shock and couldn't believe that there were already several thousand of them. From the excessive emotions, she rolled her eyes and instantly lost consciousness, falling down without strength. People nearby were shouting in panic, demanding for an ambulance immediately, for she had never seen such money in her entire life. Su Yihan stunnedly looked at what was happening, realizing that even the fastest streamers couldn't reach such a level. Suddenly, her face contorted with rage. If she had taken the chance earlier, all that money would have been hers. Chong Yuan continued to click on the screen with a sly smile, realizing that he was just playing around with Su Yihan. She bit her lip, recognizing that his reckless spending of money looked incredibly attractive. Sighing, Su Yihan closed her eyes, imagining his fingers touching not the screen but her body. Chong Yuan looked at her skeptically, perplexed as to why her sympathy grows when he gives gifts to others. At that moment, the car stopped and Brother Lon announced cheerfully that they had arrived at the Black Pearl, Seoul's finest restaurant. Chong Yuan and his girlfriend and companion arrive at the elite restaurant known for its high level of privacy. The companion enthusiastically tells them that the establishment is famous for 3 main features, piquing Chong Yuan's interest. Yuan immediately guesses 2 of them, the excellent cuisine and the picturesque scenery, which impresses the narrator. The companion notes with a sly smile that Chong Yuan is right, but hints at the last secret. Finally, he reveals the intrigue by informing that the 3rd feature is the owner's beautiful daughter, Zhao Yuqi. As soon as the companion calls Zhao Yuqi's name, the girl sitting at the table abruptly raises her head and exclaims Chong Yuan's name. Yuan flinches upon recognizing her and calls her President Zhao in confusion, clearly not expecting to meet her. Zhao Yuqi's eyes flash with a sharp glint, her gaze going straight at Chong Yuan as if burning through him. She notices another girl clinging to his arm beside him, and her affection for him immediately diminishes. In the next second, Zhao Yuqi violently jumps up, grabbing a heavy object, clearly intending to deal with the situation with force. Zhao Yuqi looks confused and pain appears in her eyes, but the rage is still there. Chong Yuan realizes that she is ready to counterattack, and tensely watches her actions. He rushes forward, deciding to intercept the situation before things get out of hand. Pushing her against the wall, he blocks any resistance, forcing her to stop. Zhao Yuqi shouts angrily, accusing him of playing with her feelings, demanding that he let go immediately. Chong Yuan realizes that the situation is getting out of control, and decides to take a risky step. He stares intently at Zhao Yuqi and suddenly asks her an unexpected question about the movie. The girl irritatedly asks what the movie has to do with their conversation, but he remains confident. Zhao Yuqi thinks for a moment, her expression softens, and confusion appears in her eyes. Chong Yuan calmly lights a cigarette and hints that his humble life hides an unusual background. Chong Yuan reveals that his family has a rule: an heir must spend 10 billion in a month to make a fortune. He explains that he spends the money carefully, investing it in various projects and initiatives. His investments include investments in technology, philanthropy, and environmental protection. One of his massive projects has been moving icebergs to solve environmental problems. With a slight smile, he admits that the recent girl was a streamer and her appearance was part of his plan. Chong Yuan confesses to Zhao Yuqi that he's kept this secret for too long and doesn't expect her to understand. He covers his face tiredly with his hand, bids her farewell and walks away, leaving her confused. Zhao Yuqi is stunned, realizing that she had accused him in vain because he had worked hard for the inheritance. Realizing her mistake, she rushes after him, begging him not to leave and admitting her guilt. Her heart trembles as he even entrusted her with such an important secret without hiding the truth. Zhao Yuqi realizes that Chong Yuan really cares for her, and her sympathy for him increases dramatically. The calm atmosphere of the restaurant returns, emphasizing that the tension between them has finally subsided. Zhao Yuqi magnanimously declares that he will pay for dinner, admitting guilt for ruining the mood. Chong Yuan's companion is amazed that everything was settled in just 5 minutes, admiring his skill. But the other girl watches with anger, mentally questioning who will come out the winner in the end. At the table, one of the girls demands an explanation of who Zhao Yuqi is and why she hasn't been introduced yet. Zhao Yuqi calls Chong Yuan brother with a slight smile, clearly showing his superiority. But her interlocutor immediately parries, reminding her that he hasn't even said his name, so it's not a good idea to get so close. The atmosphere between the two girls heats up, as if a battle between two majestic beings is breaking out in the air. Chong Yuan's companion is stunned and realizes that this is not an equal confrontation at all, but the complete domination of one side. Zhao Yuqi shines with self-confidence, her image like a flaming phoenix towering over her rival. The other girl clenches her fists furiously, her indignation growing, but she can't say anything. Chong Yuan calmly picks up the chopsticks and interrupts the tense atmosphere, stating that she wants to eat. The two girls silently glare at each other, an invisible duel seeming to erupt between them. In the end, both of them snort arrogantly while simultaneously looking away, but neither one wants to admit defeat. Chong Yuan's companion is amazed that the latter didn't get angry, and thinks his methods are truly cunning. He realizes that Chong Yuan is not just rich, but has a rare talent for attracting women to him. In his imagination, Chong Yuan appears as some sort of mythical creature capable of charming everyone around him. He used to admire him for his money, but now he sees him as a true spiritual leader. Encouraged, he declares that he is willing to follow Chong Yuan to the end, causing Chong Yuan to be bewildered. Chong Yuan returns to campus, happy that dinner at an expensive restaurant was not paid for out of his pocket. He opens the strategy interface, checking the current progress and rounding up the amounts for convenience. Completed milestones with images of girls appear in front of him, confirming the growth of their liking. The statistics show a high level of disposition, but some parameters still remain unfinished. Chong Yuan ponders whether to be more proactive now to make even more progress. Chong Yuan returns to campus, glad that the dinner at the expensive restaurant was not paid for out of his pocket. He opens the strategy interface, checking his current progress and rounding up the amounts for convenience. Completed stages with images of girls appear in front of him, confirming the growth of their liking. The statistics show a high level of disposition, but some parameters still remain unfinished. Chong Yuan ponders whether to be more active now to make even more progress. A romantic scene unfolds in the campus courtyard. Candles form a heart, creating a touching atmosphere. A young man with a guitar sings passionately, putting all his pain and regret into each note. Another guy with a bouquet of roses desperately begs the girl to remember their happy past and give him a chance. But the girl in red looks annoyed, her facial expression showing that she's not thrilled. Chong Yuan watches the scene with a slight sneer, recognizing the guy and laughing at his awkwardness. The girl abruptly pushes the persistent suitor away, her gesture full of determination and irritation. She turns around and confidently strides away without looking back at the guy, who calls out to her in a panic. The guy pulls his hand forward in desperation, hoping to stop her, but she's no longer listening. Suddenly, the girl runs up to Chong Yuan, enthusiastically calling his name as if she's been looking for him for a long time. She happily looks at the phone and says that today is her truly happy day. The girl eagerly holds out her phone to Chong Yuan, begging him to add her to WeChat. The crowd around is stunned by the unexpected turn, and the rejected guy drops to his knees in despair. His face is red with anger, he can't believe he lost again, especially to Chong Yuan. Chong Yuan maintains a nonchalant expression, clearly unimpressed by the drama going on. He turns to Li Yong sarcastically, asking if he finds the situation strange and illogical. Li Yong cries out in rage, accusing Chong Yuan of wanting to continue humiliating him. But Chong Yuan calmly admits that he has always been jealous of Li Yong and his carefree life. He recalls that Li Yong easily attracted the attention of girls, but didn't appreciate their sincere feelings. When he loses this influence, he is overcome with panic, for he is not used to defeat. In his pursuit of success, he ignored the feelings of his girlfriend, who now stares lonely at her phone. Chong Yuan shows the phone with unread messages, accusing Li Yong of pushing the girl away on his own. Li Yong drops to his knees, and Chong Yuan calmly asks if he feels like he's just a clown now. The realization of guilt weighs heavily on Li Yong, and he bitterly admits his mistake. The crowd comments judgmentally, reminding him that he showed no care or respect in the relationship. A girl in a sports jacket is stunned by what is happening, her gaze filled with surprise and dismay. The girl looks at Chong Yuan with admiration, her heart filled with joy that he understands her. Whispers begin to whisper around, trying to figure out what kind of relationship he has with this new girl. One of the observers angrily decides to tell Chi-Chi, calling Chong Yuan a bastard. Late in the evening, there is a loud scream in the dormitory when the news reaches its destination. Chi-Chi screams in rage, her face contorted with despair and her emotions overwhelming her completely. Zhao Yuqi confidently declares that Chong Yuan is incapable of treason, no matter how many people say otherwise. But her interlocutor insists, claiming that he saw the girl confess to Chong Yuan and he responded with looks. He angrily shows evidence of his spending, accusing him of lavishing money on other women. Zhao Yuqi calmly explains that Chong Yuan has already told her this, and the total amount is over 80 million. With a slight chuckle, she adds that trust is the foundation of a relationship and her opponent is too inexperienced to realize it. Zhao Yuqi looks at her interlocutor with a smile, perplexed at how such an intelligent person could act so foolishly. Chong Yuan yawns, completely uninvolved in what is happening, causing the people around him to be indignant. His friend yells irritably, demanding that he focus, but Chong Yuan reminds him that he was literally dragged here. The girls in the room begin to whisper, asking if he's free tonight and how he's feeling. His friend suspiciously demands an explanation as to why another girl is here, clearly unhappy with the situation. The girl named Xiaoqiu, sobbing, told how she had betrayed her lover for a rich man and paid the price. Her hysteria prevented her from continuing the class, but she only kept saying that she deserved to be punished. The guy with short hair tensely said that it was difficult for him if Lin Rong was around. Chong Yuan frowned, wondering if he had gone too far in his actions. He saw her guilt, but realized that she was genuinely remorseful for the past. Chong Yuan stared intently in front of him, wondering if he was being too heartless. A woman with highly gathered hair asked with a smile if he was really the same Yang Zong. The girl in green flinched upon hearing this name and nervously tried to say something. The guy laughed and mockingly declared that if Chong Yuan was Yang Zong, he would rip his head off. The man in a strict suit calmly remarked that Yang Zong was indeed popular, but it was reckless to compare himself to him. Chong Yuan looked at the man carefully, realizing that this was indeed the same Li Yuntao. Li Yuntao introduced himself as the owner of the establishment and offered to exchange contacts with a smirk. The girl in green blushed confusedly, not knowing how to react to the situation. Chong Yuan remembered that Li Yuntao was his rival in school and used wealth to bully him. With a sly smile, he thought that if the latter wanted to stand out, he would give him the opportunity to do so in full. The girl with a sly smile offered to test how someone would handle stress. Chong Yuan introduced Li Yuntao, emphasizing his status as a rich and successful businessman. He nonchalantly added that his family had recently received several million in compensation. Li Yuntao frowned incredulously, realizing that Chong Yuan actually had money. The girl turned pale as she realized that Chong Yuan was not who she expected, and her sympathy plummeted. Chong Yuan grinned as he watched their previous relationship completely collapse. The girl happily agreed to add Li Yuntao to her contacts without hesitation. With a cold stare, she thought that even a fool knows what the right choice is. Li Yuntao mockingly noted that the girl's demeanor was amusing and she easily changed sides. He leaned over to Chong Yuan and said with a sneer that he could only stomp on him now. Chong Yuan's eyes opened wide as he suddenly realized something important. Li Yuntao announced to the waiter that Chong Yuan had cheered him up, so there was no need to pay the table bill. Chong Yuan covered his face with his hand and laughed loudly as if he couldn't contain his emotions. The guy with short hair worriedly said his name, not realizing what was going on. Chong Yuan smiled and assured everyone that he was fine, he had just realized something. Chong Yuan coldly thought that he had given Lin Xiaotong a chance, but she hadn't changed. He no longer felt the slightest bit of sympathy for her and completely severed the connection. Li Yuntao smirked and asked why he was leaving so quickly, hinting at weakness. Chong Yuan hesitated after hearing about the classmates' meeting that was scheduled at a restaurant. With a sly smile, he decided that since Li Dashao had invited him, he would definitely come. The former classmates gathered in the restaurant with the golden plaque, raising a toast to the reunion. Li Yuntao announced with a wide smile that he was treating everyone, after all, money was there to be spent. The guests thanked him for his generosity and said admiringly that he was perfect for Xiao Ruoyu. Chong Yuan thought with a sneer that the latter did not miss a single chance to boast. At this moment, a girl in an elegant dress entered the hall, apologizing for being late. The girl explained with a graceful smile that the driver had taken the day off, so she had to take a cab. Chong Yuan looked at her, realizing that Xiao Ruoyu had been his only light during his high school years. She seemed unattainable and mysterious, making all the guys lose their heads in admiration. Chong Yuan casually suggested that she add him on WeChat, eliciting surprised looks. Li Yuntao clenched his teeth furiously, thinking that Chong Yuan was a cheeky dog, something he would soon regret. Xiao Ruoyu calmly agreed to add Chong Yuan, but curiosity was read in her eyes. The system noted the successful binding, displaying her outward attractiveness and zero sympathy. Someone at the table remarked in surprise that Chong Yuan hadn't seemed so imposing before. The girl with short hair chuckled, thinking that he had simply become a servant of the rich. She angrily accused him of helping scoundrels who cheat innocent girls. The guy in the yellow t-shirt irritably stated that the girl was talking nonsense. She vehemently objected, accusing the other guest of playing on her feelings and quickly finding a replacement. The girl sobbed, complaining that she had now turned into a jade statue, expensive but unnecessary. Xiao Ruoyu thought with disgust that a man playing with women only caused squeamishness. Li Yuntao grinningly offered Chong Yuan a job, claiming that at least his money was clean. Chong Yuan grimly chuckled, realizing that Liao Jia had launched an attack and Li Yuntao was only playing along. With a cold glint in his eyes, he thought that these two had given him the opportunity to put them in their place himself. A message popped up on the screen of his phone, ordering him to bring the Ferrari to the restaurant. The guests discussed the dinner admiringly, noting that Li Yuntao knew how to impress others. Li Yuntao smugly declared that he had completely triumphed today. With a smug smile, Li Yuntao offered Xiao Ruoyu a ride home, claiming that he was her personal driver. The waiter politely asked him to move his car away as the space was needed for an incoming VIP guest. Li Yuntao was indignant, insisting that since he was spending money in this restaurant, he shouldn't be told to move. He frowned, curiously wondering who this important guest was that he was being asked to move for. In the elite parking area, there were already several luxury cars glittering in the night lights. Li Yuntao arrogantly declared that he wanted to see in person who was so influential. The crowd gasped as a Ferrari LaFerrari worth over 20 million drove into the parking lot. A man in an elegant suit got out of the car, and someone recognized him as Zhang Haotian. Li Yuntao inwardly tensed up as he realized that this man belonged to the upper circle of the rich. Chang Yuan shook Zhang Haotian's hand with a smile, and Li Yuntao exclaimed stunned, trying to understand what was going on. Chang Yuan smilingly thanked Zhang Haotian for bringing the car from afar. Zhang Haotian replied in a friendly manner that he was honored because they were like family. Li Yuntao was startled to realize that if Zhang Haotian had so much respect for Chang Yuan, then who was he really? The crowd started talking, discussing whether Chang Yuan was really that rich or just working for someone. Xiao Ruoyu watched carefully, realizing that Li Yuntao and Liao Jia were trying to slander Chang Yuan. Despite his wealth, Chang Yuan never once tried to justify himself to everyone. Xiao Ruoyu watched him with interest, noting his equanimity and confidence. Her sympathy for him suddenly increased, as if she saw him in a new light. Chang Yuan offered to walk her home with a slight smile, showing courtesy. Xiao Ruoyu calmly agreed, answering briefly but with noticeable warmth in her voice. The crowd watched admiringly as Chang Yuan's luxurious car drifted away, eliciting envy. One of the men mockingly remarked that the difference between people was sometimes greater than that between a man and a dog. The car rushed through the night city, glittering against the bright lights of the metropolis. Xiao Ruoyu reflected that she didn't know Chang Yuan well enough, and the sudden trip with him made her a little uneasy. Chang Yuan thought with a slight smile that he had been watching her closely for a while now. Chang Yuan noticed the keychain on Xiao Ruoyu's bag and assumed it was a Dikao Tamon character. She asked in surprise how he knew since it wasn't a very popular item. Chang Yuan confessed that he also loves the series and especially admires the transformation of the main character. Xiao Ruoyu perked up, admitting that she had adored it since childhood, but rarely met girls with the same fascination. Chang Yuan thought with interest that her coldness might just be a protective mask hiding her lively nature. Chang Yuan watched Xiao Ruoyu's radiant smile, feeling the urge to protect such beauty. He caught himself thinking that he was feeling a real sense of love for the first time in his life. The car pulled up to her luxurious house, sparkling with lights amidst the greenery. Chang Yuan admitted with a warm smile that meeting her made the evening special. Xiao Ruoyu playfully corrected him, suggesting that he just call her Ruoyu, and thanked him for accompanying her. Chang Yuan and Xiao Ruoyu froze shyly, looking at each other, not knowing what to say. After a second, they laughed at the same time, sharing a sincere and warm moment. Xiao Ruoyu thought that Chang Yuan was really interesting, since he didn't think she was childish. But upon entering the house, she was confronted by her mother, who immediately started a conversation about a blind date. Xiao Ruoyu froze, not knowing how to answer, realizing that this topic did not please her at all. Her mother reminded the girl that her father's business was going badly, and the Han family's investment was necessary to save her. The girl, barely holding back tears, resented why her feelings meant nothing in the face of the family's problems. Her mother coldly stated that her comfortable life had been paid for by the family, and now she should repay the same. The girl froze in confusion when she heard that if the company collapsed, their family would be on the brink of destruction. The mother sighed tiredly and asked if her daughter really wanted her to beg for her consent. The girl lowered her head and replied to her mother in a surreptitious manner that she understood her and would make a decision. At this time, Chang Yuan was flipping through the messages on his phone and came across a discussion of hot news. He stared at the screen in surprise, trying to figure out what Zhang Haotian had done this time. An article flashed on the screen claiming that the heiress of the Xiao family might marry to save the company. Chang Yuan was dumbfounded to realize that he himself was caught up in this scandal. Chang Yuan saw the news of Xiao Ruoyu's impending marriage and watched it thoughtfully from afar. He clenched his fists and objected loudly, refusing to put up with her getting married. Determination flashed in his eyes. He wouldn't let himself become just a random episode in her life again. The people observing the situation noticed him and questioned him doubtfully, asking if he was really the same runner. The woman with the clipboard confidently confirmed that he was wearing the same clothes and looked suspicious. Chang Yuan warily looked at the hand extended to him, not understanding what was wanted from him. Xun Shui introduced herself with a smile and bluntly asked if he wanted to become an internet celebrity. She held out her company's business card to him, letting him know that she was serious. Chang Yuan didn't hesitate to refuse, saying that he wasn't interested at all. Xun Shui frowned, surprised by his determination, and realized that she would have to look for another approach. Xun Shui persistently approached Chang Yuan, explaining that her company was a serious media network with favorable terms. She emphasized that the powerful businessman Yen was behind them, controlling a major platform. With a smirk, she added that rejection could result in Chong Yuan being blacklisted. Chong Yuan erupted with rage, annoyed at her intrusiveness and the mention of Yan's name. Shun Shui squinted mockingly, clearly underestimating his determination, and calmly asked how he was going to stop her. Chong Yuan coldly replied that just because he refused, it didn't mean others would do the same. He opened his phone and saw that someone was already discussing the situation and ready to intervene. A company building loomed in the distance, hinting that events would soon take a new turn. Shun Shui froze in surprise as Chong Yuan admitted that he hadn't thought out his next move yet. At this moment, his phone suddenly rang, and he was perplexed to see that it was the boss himself calling. The loud voice on the phone angrily ordered Shun Shui to come back immediately since she was so careless with her work. She panically excused herself to the boss, assuring that she had done nothing wrong. Chong Yuan thought with grim determination that if the Han group dared to fight him for the woman, he would show them his superiority. Meanwhile, Xiao Ruoyu was riding in the car, preparing to meet the children of the Han family, and tried to remain calm. Her mother reminded her that their family was in crisis, and Uncle Han's help was a reasonable solution to consider. Xiao Ruoyu absent-mindedly swiped her hand across the phone, as if she was hesitating whether to answer. She looked at the screen and saw a message asking her where she was now. After thinking for a bit, she replied that she was on her way to the Emperor restaurant for a scheduled meeting. Chong Yuan read her message and mentally chuckled, realizing that she was taking this as a blind date. Xiao Ruoyu frowned, pondering that if she still had to be with someone, Chong Yuan was clearly better than the obnoxious Han Xiaojiang. Xiao Ruoyu sat in the car, her expression tense, as if she was preparing for the inevitable. The driver calmly reminded her that her father had never asked her for anything, but now he hoped for her understanding. She remained silent as she pondered his words, realizing that refusal could backfire on the family. Finally, with barely a word, she agreed, accepting it as a way to help her father. The car pulled up to the luxurious building where her planned evening with the Han family was already waiting for her. Xiao Ruoyu and her mother arrived at the luxury hotel, where they were immediately greeted by a staff member. He politely informed them that President Han was already waiting for them in the meeting room and asked them to follow him. The man furtively appraised Xiao Ruoyu, noting her natural beauty that had long been rumored. In the shadows, someone remarked with a grim chuckle that she would soon become the Han family's prey. Xiao Ruoyu felt strangely uneasy and looked warily at the people moving away ahead. One of the men was tightly clutching a briefcase filled with documents, which looked strange for a normal date. Xiao Ruoyu entered the room, accompanied by her mother and the people from the Han family, feeling the tension rising. An elderly man turned to Han Xiaojiang with a satisfied smile, ordering him to prepare tea for a future relative. Her eyes narrowed in surprise as the meaning of what was happening began to become clear, causing her to become alarmed. There were papers on the table, and Xiao Ruoyu realized in horror that this was not a date at all. Xiao Ruoyu glared angrily at her father, demanding an explanation of what exactly he was up to. In the distance, in a high-rise office, Han Sanshue was calmly observing the city like a skilled strategist waiting for his gain. This powerful corporation controlled many areas of business, including those in the gray area. Han Sanshue noted with a slight chuckle that Xiao Ruoyu had indeed grown into a refined young lady. The woman opposite politely replied that he was praising her too much, continuing to type on her phone. Han Xiaojiang said with a smirk that he couldn't stop thinking about Xiao Ruoyu after their last meeting. She discreetly thanked him, though her gaze betrayed a clear reluctance to continue this conversation. Han Xiaojiang confidently said that there was no need for formalities between them, as they would soon become family. Suddenly, he unceremoniously touched her, causing her to be shocked and instantly disgusted. Xiao Ruoyu abruptly yanked her hand away, angrily demanding that he take his hands off her and not call them family. Xiao Ruoyu's father angrily rebuked her for treating Han Xiaojiang rudely, demanding that she behave politely. She erupted with rage, barely holding back her tears, feeling betrayed by her own family. Her father hastily tried to smooth things over, assuring her that his daughter simply didn't understand what was best for her. Han Sanshue smirked, motioning for everyone to sit down and carefully discuss the terms of the deal. The Han family's lawyer announced that their investment in exchange for the marriage was 100 million yuan. The lawyer announced with cold certainty that the last part of the deal would be finalized when Xiao Ruoyu gave birth to an heir. Her hands trembled with rage and she clutched the ill-fated documents with all her might, realizing their meaning. Anger overwhelmed her and she exclaimed that neither marriage nor a child was possible, it was absurd. With tears in her eyes she turned to her father, accusing him of actually selling her. Her mother tried to calm her down, but Xiao Ruoyu cried out in despair that she had no intention of putting up with this. Xiao Ruoyu, trembling with anger, exclaimed why business problems should ruin her life. She angrily declared that she would never marry Han Xiaojiang no matter what. Suddenly there was a loud slapping sound. Her father slapped her cheek, unable to contain his rage. Her eyes filled with tears, and a painful sense of betrayal spilled into her soul. Her father, seething with anger, accused her of selfishness, wondering how he could have raised such an ungrateful daughter. Xiao Ruoyu, in tears, repeated the question whether she was really being accused of selfishness after everything that had happened. Her mother gently explained that her father was doing it for the sake of the family, as their company was on the verge of collapse. But Xiao Ruoyu disagreed, begging her mother to believe that together they could rebuild everything without sacrifice. In desperation, the mother knelt down on her knees, begging her daughter to have mercy and pity on her. Everyone in the room froze in surprise, and Xiao Ruoyu stared in horror at the mother standing before her. Xiao Ruoyu cried out in desperation, demanding that the mother stand up and not humiliate herself in front of everyone. Her mother tearfully begged her to agree, or else she wouldn't be able to rise from her knees. Han Xiaojiang smiled smugly, assuring her that he sincerely loved her and would fulfill her every wish. Xiao Ruoyu lowered her head, mentally asking herself if this was her destiny. In her imagination, she saw herself in a luxurious golden cage, symbolizing the sacrifices the family demanded. Xiao Ruoyu whispered surreptitiously that she would do whatever her mother said, as long as she stood up. Her mother was relieved to call her good daughter, rejoicing at her obedience. Her father hurriedly excused himself, assuring her that his words earlier had been spoken in a fit of emotion. Han Sanshui smugly said that since there were no objections, they could proceed to sign the contract. He emphasized that it would speed up Xiao Ruoyu and Han Xiaojiang's marriage, as well as the flow of funds to Zhao's family. Han Xiaojiang smugly smirked, reminding Xiao Ruoyu that despite her disdain, she would become his wife. Dirty fantasies flashed through his mind, where the cold and proud girl completely belonged to him. There was an awkward silence in the room, everyone tensely waiting for the final signing of the contract. Suddenly, there was a loud shout, and Chong Yuan burst into the room with fury, knocking the guard to the ground. Xiao Ruoyu turned around sharply, startled by his appearance, and the others stared at the intruder in amazement. Chong Yuan stepped forward from the shadows, his voice sounding firm and defiant, demanding his opponent to show himself. A woman in the crowd opened her eyes wide, amazed that Chong Yuan had actually come. A stocky man irritably shouted out that this brash man was acting reckless and seemed to want to die. But Chong Yuan didn't even let him finish, as his fist slammed into his opponent with force. From the impact, the man soared into the air, losing his balance, and collapsed to the ground with a crash. The man with the cigarette in his hand irritably threw out that his opponent looked like an idiot and should get out. The guard in the suit stepped forward menacingly, accusing Chong Yuan of insolence and threatening him. Chong Yuan grinned and coldly stated that his opponents were nothing more than scum. The gray-haired man raised his hand, urging everyone to stop, and spoke of the importance of the deal. Squinting his eyes, he looked at Chong Yuan carefully, amazed by his ability and insight. The gray-haired man wondered what noble family Chong Yuan belonged to, and promised to visit his family. Chong Yuan grinned and replied coldly that his opponent was not significant enough to know that. The older man abruptly besieged the stocky fellow, telling him to stay out of it and just observe. Chong Yuan confidently assured Ruoyu that he would help her deal with her family's difficulties. She hesitated, blushing slightly, and at the same time, someone exclaimed in a panic about the contract. Chong Yuan mockingly remarked that Mr. Xiao was undervaluing his daughter by selling her for only 100 million. Tearing up the papers, he announced that he was buying 60% of the company for 500 million. There was a shocked silence in the hall, and then there were surprised exclamations as the amount stunned everyone. The gray-haired man frowned, realizing that only a group with a capital of over 10 billion could operate money so easily. Han Sanshui gazed intently at Chong Yuan, recognizing that he had met many but could not figure out his intentions. The man in the suit greedily thought that with 500 million, he could not only regain his position but also expand his influence. Chong Yuan calmly explained that the money was not given for nothing, he had another demand. Ruoyu looked at him in surprise, not understanding what he wanted, and began to get anxious. An overwhelming thought flashed through her mind. Chong Yuan is going to buy her with this money. Her eyes filled with pain, and as she sank to the ground, she whispered bitterly that he was no better than the others. Ruoyu bitterly thought that she was once again being tried to be sold like an ordinary commodity. But suddenly, Chong Yuan loudly announced that his condition was to transfer 60% of the shares into her name. He calmly added that the money would be transferred as soon as the deal was finalized. Ruoyu looked at him with admiration, her eyes filled with genuine surprise and gratitude. At this moment in her mind, Chong Yuan had become a true hero who had saved her fate. The secretary with glasses announced that the new contract was ready and could be signed. Chong Yuan gently nudged Ruoyu toward the document, assuring her that no one would be able to control her life now. A message popped up on the phone screen saying that 500 million yuan had been deposited into the bank account. The woman in furs exclaimed with delight, shocked that the money had actually arrived. The man in a suit asked incredulously if these were all Chong Yuan's terms, to which the man calmly confirmed. Chong Yuan coldly warned that the Shao family's fate depended on him, and any attempt to force Ruoyu again would result in dire consequences. His words struck like lightning, leaving his interlocutor in a daze and feeling of unbearable pain. He calmly turned to Ruoyu and offered to leave, assuring him that there was nothing more to do here. The gray-haired man smiled strangely, praised Chong Yuan and apologized for his son. Meanwhile, someone realized with horror that Chong Yuan possessed great strength and it was dangerous to feud with him. The stocky fellow shouted in anger, making excuses for his father and trying to blame Chong Yuan. But the gray-haired man went into a rage, called him a lowlife and copped a blow, dooming him to severe punishment. Meanwhile, Chong Yuan and Ruoyu calmly left the building without looking back at the chaos behind them. The high-rise shone in the sunlight, symbolizing the new chapter and the changes that had taken place. In the car, Ruoyu looked warmly at Chong Yuan and whispered thankfully that he had saved her. Ruoyu thanked Chong Yuan for saving her, but he only calmly remarked that it wasn't the first time he had done so. Sometime in the past, she was riding her bicycle down a dark street, hoping she wouldn't meet any bad people. Suddenly, a blinding headlight burst from around a corner, interrupting her peaceful ride with a sudden noise. Finding herself in front of a group of strangers, she fearfully asked who they were and what they wanted. One of them smirked, said she had no pocket money, and offered to have some fun. One of the strangers said with a chuckle that her screaming was only making the situation more interesting. But suddenly someone called her name and shouted desperately for her to run. And stranger backed her up, loudly ordering her not to stop or turn around. The gang leader was outraged that someone dared to interfere and order his men to beat up the intruder. At that moment, she was too scared and couldn't see who had saved her. When Ruoyu came to her senses and brought the police, the rescuer and the attackers had already disappeared. She had always thought that she would never meet the person who had once saved her life. But now, looking at Chong Yuan, she realized with astonishment that it was him. A message appeared on the screen, confirming the successful completion of the task and the increase in Ruoyu's favor. Chong Yuan blushed slightly, realizing that his status had now changed and he was even more powerful. Chong Yuan was stunned by the quick success, but assured himself that he still had many trump cards to play. Ruoyu, blushing, thought about what had happened and suddenly realized that this wasn't a bad thing either. He was no longer just an observer, but a person who intervened and changed fate. Now he wasn't afraid to stand openly in front of her, ready to fight for his feelings. He hadn't let his past self down. This time he had the strength to change his life. Chong Yuan and Ruoyu froze, their gazes met, and it was as if a special atmosphere hung around them. They slowly approached each other, and Ruoyu's heart beat harder in anticipation. But suddenly, the phone broke the silence with a frightening message that resounded with threats of pain. A call from Zhao Yuqi popped up on the screen, causing both of them to instantly gather their thoughts. Chong Yuan, sitting in the car, calmly listened to the voice on the receiver while the caller reminded him of tomorrow. Chong Yuan smiled when he heard that his interlocutor had already prepared his birthday presents. Somewhere in the building, a man was handing over a box, and the voice on the receiver asked him not to give too expensive items. The woman on the other end of the line clarified that the gifts should be thoughtful and not too luxurious. Chong Yuan nodded, promising to think about what exactly he could give on this special day. Suddenly, however, his road was blocked, and he wondered irritably what to do with his car now. Someone excitedly exclaimed that he now had his own house worth 60 million. The woman was enjoying the moment, surrounded by money, as if making a dream come true. Chong Yuan was surprised to think that she didn't even ask who arranged all this. Ruoyu suggested that he go to her classmate's birthday party. He wondered if an invitation would make him more open in the eyes of others and reduce suspicion. Ruoyu gently declined the invitation, explaining that she had a lot of things to do after signing the contract. She wistfully noted that sometimes asking questions was okay, but it didn't mean you'd get answers. Chong Yuan remarked with a smile that if she went, she would be the prettiest one at the party. He wondered if he was being polite, but if Ruoyu really went, it could cause problems. When they got out of the car, she thanked him gratefully for everything he had done for her. Chong Yuan grinningly suggested that Ruoyu repay him with a small percentage for his help. Without hesitation, she kissed him gently on the cheek, making him freeze in surprise. With a smile, she said that he was now sealed and officially belonged to her. Chong Yuan was stunned, feeling a blush flood his face at this turn of events. Humming, he walked over to his car, but his joy instantly vanished at the sight of the wrecked car. The girl looked at Chong Yuan in surprise and asked if this car really belonged to him. The two girls stood in front of the luxurious car, amazed by its brilliance and status. They watched the car drive away, leaving them wondering about Chong Yuan's true wealth. One of them speculated that he was lying about his status, or perhaps he was just testing Shu Tong. Shu Tong's eyes went wide with shock when it came to her how much she had underestimated him. Shu Tong's eyes flashed with determination, and she thought that if she was being tested, she would now prove otherwise. But soon the realization caught up with her. She had made a mistake again and missed her chance. In tears, she clung to her friend, sobbing that Chong Yuan would likely never forgive her again. Her friend only quietly confirmed that the chance had indeed been missed, looking at her with a slight sneer. But then, with a chilling smile, she added that if Shu Tong had been in her place, things might have turned out differently. Shu Tong flared up with rage and demanded an explanation, asking if her friend was also thinking about Chong Yuan. The latter only smirked and stated that he was too good for her not to pursue him. With a slight sneer, she suggested that Chong Yuan might have gotten tired of Shu Tong and now preferred someone else. Shu Tong couldn't stand it and shouted in anger, accusing her friend that last night was just a trap. Furious, they grabbed each other's hair, shouting mutual accusations of greed and betrayal. Shu Tong, mad with rage, shouted that she would kill her rival and clawed at her. The crowd around watched with interest as the girls shouted accusations and broke off their friendship. Subdued sobs echoed in the background of the school buildings, filling the air with heavy regret. Shu Tong sobbed, realizing that she had lost both Chong Yuan and her friend, left alone. Meanwhile, Chong Yuan sat calmly behind the wheel, feeling that the distance between them had become insurmountable. Shu Tong lowered her head, realizing that if things continued like this, she wouldn't stand a chance. Suddenly, a voice called out, urging her to stop crying, and a stranger called her name. The woman smilingly introduced herself as Shun Shuyu, holding a black card. She offered Shu Tong a job in her company, hinting that she could become an internet celebrity. Then, with a sly squint, she added that she had a way to help bring Chong Yuan back.